Jackson Jr. trade was consummated, where I did a TV hit with our friend Dave Fox, 2 Pelotons and 2 Emmys. And I said, Jaren Jackson Jr. is about to fly into Salt Lake City to learn he has a back problem. I was just off with the injury. It's a knee. And look, I'm not a doctor, okay? Didn't finish medical school. Started, didn't finish. I want to be sensitive here. It sounds like he's got a growth on his knee that needs to be removed. So, like, if that's the deal, it's too bad. But at the same time, it is part of the broader conversation we've been having all week as the Utah Jazz have been indelicately manipulating lineups for draft capital, and now they're just more front-facing about it.
Well, and you weren't wrong on the Jaren Jackson Jr. stuff. He was not going to come here and play a bunch of minutes and try to get this team into a play-in game or on the cusp of the postseason. That's not the plan in 2025, 2026, nor should it be for the Utah Jazz. As we've talked about, protecting that draft asset is top of mind. Now, that being said, also not a doctor, but many players in the NBA could use some sort of scope, some sort of cleanup in a joint, in their knees, in their ankles, and to get one with Jaren Jackson Jr., I would say is fairly convenient, but also not saying it's not needed. It's just a good time to do it and get it out of the way. Yeah. Let him rest up and again, still incentivize what you have going for you leading into the NBA draft.
I will say this, and we're going to talk about it today. Man, does he look good. I think he's going to fit in so well with what Will Hardy wants to do with this system. It's only been 3 games, but honestly speaking, and I'm not being hyperbolic, these have been 3 of the most enjoyable Jazz games since they traded Mitchell and Gobert. I'm juiced for next year, man. I think they've got a shot to be really, really good. Now, I would watch San Antonio, okay? Everybody talks about OKC, and they're awesome. I'm not saying they're not. They'll probably go win the thing, but every time I watch San Antonio and I hone in on Victor Wembanyama, it just looks like the next thing. And we talked about it yesterday. We'll talk about it on the show today as NBA basketball kind of moving into some coverage here now that football is kind of gone, but football is never entirely gone. Of course, there's off-season stuff in both college and pro football, so we'll get to some of the storylines on the program today. On the college basketball side of things, a little bit of a weird kind of week off for both Utah and BYU. The Utes are on the road taking on Cincinnati. A well-earned break for the Utes men's basketball team. BYU welcomes in Colorado. They're going to retire Jimmer Fredette's number, the great Jimmer Fredette. We'll try to get Jimmer on the show. He's in front of the program. He's joined us before. And then Utah State, the class of the Mountain West Conference, looks like they're going to take on Memphis coming up on Saturday. So some college basketball to get to on the program today, as you would expect. So we'll dig into all of these storylines going on, including a very unfortunate situation involving a BYU wide receiver that we'll get to on the show. This kind of stuff is just really, really hard and honestly really, really sad. And ultimately, topically, there are a lot of things that we're going to get to with some of this stuff. I'll just say this. These situations remind me about the part of the rivalry that I don't love. Like if you're using a sexual assault to take a victory lap on your rival because you support a group of college kids that plays a children's game and calls it a sport, maybe don't do that. It's pretty gross, in my opinion. This is a really, really horrible look, obviously, and you just feel so bad for the victim here. And obviously, you let the process play out, and everybody deserves that, including Parker Kingston, even if he doesn't play for the college team that you love. So we'll follow the story. He is being held without bail in southern Utah, in the Washington County Jail. This alleged incident happened a year ago in February, prior to the start of the college football season. Brigham Young released their statement saying that they have just found out about it. Here's the statement from BYU. Quote, BYU became aware today of the arrest of Parker Kingston. The university takes any allegation very seriously and will cooperate with law enforcement due to federal and university privacy laws and practices for students. The university will not be able to provide additional comment. So that's what we have from BYU. Of course, Jake Retzlaff accused of a sexual assault in a civil lawsuit. The case was later dismissed, and then Retzlaff was suspended for 7 games, and of course he transferred to Tulane. And this is a streak of bad behavior from BYU athletes that has gone on for a little while now, and I just have to wonder how this is landing with people that are writing checks to support acquiring talent for basketball and football players. But that's not the biggest thing here. The biggest thing here is there's an alleged assault that has taken place, and there's the victim that clearly believes that she was wronged by Parker Kingston. So again, we live in America. Okay, there is a thing called due process. Obviously, we forget that with certain situations, but I won't forget it on this show, even if it's something that's uncomfortable to talk about. So we'll follow the storylines, and if there's any update, we will bring it to you. As Parker Kingston, 21 years old, is being held at the Washington County Jail without bail, accused of a sexual assault and first-degree rape. It happened a year ago, last February. All right, good guest list on this Thursday afternoon. Our first guest, pumped to have Smitty in today. So many things to talk to Richard Smith about live in studio for an entire hour. How about a little band McMahon, a little Tim McMahon today? A lot of good NBA stuff. And RSL is getting ready to open their campaign coming up in a matter of days now, next weekend. So we'll bring in Pablo Mastroeni, a bunch of new players brought in, a bunch of old players let go. So we'll bring in Pablo today. Then, of course, as we are wont to do on Thursday afternoon, it's time for Sports Court with our friends from Handy and Handy. So we'll go Richard Smith, we'll go Tim McMahon, we'll go Pablo Mastroeni, go a little Handy and Handy. Me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, and that guy, Porter Larson, who's already chimed in. But how's your Thursday, buddy?
Thursday's gone well, Spencer. Just enjoying some Olympic action and a bunch of hoop stuff. Thanks for the latte, by the way. Always a treat.
I got to say, an afternoon latte, I don't usually consume, but a little peek behind the curtain. We had some early pre-recording to do. So I found about a 20, 30-minute gap. Went over to our friends at Raw Bean. Couple of vanilla lattes down, and I'm ready to roll, man. I got some juice going.
The problem is that you offer and I accept, but I've already had my caffeine.
Yeah.
So then I get wired a little bit. Could be worse. It could be worse. Well, could be overindulging in something worse than caffeine.
Maybe that means we have some Porter hot takes coming today if you got the caffeine flowing through the veins.
I don't know.
Okay, we'll have to see. All right, Smitty live in studio. But before we get to Richard Smith, courtesy of our good friends, your good friends at Prize Picks, it's time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 with Prize Picks.
So when the Utah Jazz acquired Jaren Jackson Jr., a lot of people were very confused, and we've had guests on a national stage as we try to bring you the national perspective on our local storylines on this show instead of having like the BYU beat writer from the Deseret News 7 times in 2 weeks. And even a guy like Tom Haberstroh, we'll see what McMahon has to say. We've had Haberstroh, we've had Dave McMiniman, and most everybody is kind of going, well, wait a second, why would you do this during this draft cycle when there's so much at stake as it pertains to the draft pick that you're wanting to retain? And I responded that day. I did a hit with our guy Dave Fox over at KUTV. Like, the line I used was Jaren Jackson Jr. is about to fly into Salt Lake to learn he has a back problem. Now, he learned he has a knee problem. And here's the thing, like, it's a growth in his knee. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to be the guy that cracks the mic like, hey, I had a friend who had I have no idea what this procedure is. And certainly, if it's something that needs to be taken care of, to Porter's point earlier, right now is a very convenient time to have it taken care of. I just watched him play 3 straight games for the Jazz, and he looked awesome. He didn't look like he was compromised at all. He oftentimes, in all 3 games, he looked like the best player on the floor for either team, including in Orlando, that has Paolo Banchero and Desmond Bane, in Miami, that has Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero. Right? Like Triple J, as we're trying to call him around here, has looked like the best player on the floor all 3 games he's played for the Utah Jazz. So the announcement came down today that he is going to have surgery to remove a growth in his left knee, and the expectation is he will miss the remainder of the season. Now, the Utah Jazz have been undelicately trying to lose basketball games, but as of late, they haven't been doing that very well because, breaking news, and this is for everybody that seems to be confused, there are 10 teams in this league that are not serious about competing. As we've discussed, honestly, for years, this is a massive problem for the league. And when you look at the rest of the Jazz schedule, as we sit here today, the Jazz are 18-37. Okay, so they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're 7th right now. The Jazz are 7th. It's not good enough. It's not good/bad enough, I guess is what I'll say. because as long as they stay in this zone, there's an unbelievably good chance they lose their draft asset. Do you understand what a step in the wrong direction it would be if the Jazz send their lottery pick, their top 8 protected lottery pick, to the world champs? And by the way, if Oklahoma City, let's say they just get the 8th pick or 9th pick in the draft, no matter who they draft, like even if they draft Darren Peterson or AJ DeBonsa, they're going to get like G League minutes. They don't have any room for anybody else. They're just so good and they're so deep and they have so much talent. Like their 8th, 9th, 10th men would start on plenty of teams in the NBA. It wouldn't just be a massive blow to the Jazz. It would be a massive coup and get for Oklahoma City, who also owns some other draft picks that are floating out there, including the pick for the Clippers, I believe. So it's simply just paramount and important for a team that continues to rebuild after a 4-year process that didn't see a ton of upward trajectory to maintain this asset. You have to. And because there are so many teams that are doing the same thing, the only compelling thing about the Jazz the rest of the way is how are they going to pull this off? How are they going to be bad enough night in and night out to hold on to their draft pick? They see Portland tonight. Now, Portland has improved. They're better than I think most people expected. As I referenced, Tom Haberstroh, friend of the show, who joins us, is on the broadcast team, and I spent some time on the phone with Tom today. And there's a lot to like about this improvement with Portland. The Jazz will be able to tank tonight. But guess who else has joined the Tankathon 2026? Memphis. The Jazz are at Memphis coming up on Friday. Was going to be a homecoming of sorts for Jaren Jackson Jr., but how are they going to pull that off? Like, the only fascinating thing for Jazz fans now is to tune in for the games where the Jazz are playing against other teams that are trying to lose, and then watch that matchup, watch that battle. Who can sit who? Who can manipulate minutes? Are we going to go zone and let teams just shoot wide open threes all game? Are we going to see a bunch of Ole defense? Because if, again, of the 10 teams that are in the mix for losing on purpose, the Jazz see them quite a bit the rest of the way. Okay, so we'll keep the 10 teams in mind. We'll go over the schedule before we catch a break. Memphis, coming up next Thursday and Saturday, they have a home and home against New Orleans. Get ready for that. They're at Washington, okay? They've got another game at Sacramento. Milwaukee might be joining in this group. They're going to play the Bucks. They're going to have Washington at home. They're also going to have another battle with New Orleans on the road, and then the second to last game, the last home game of the year, might shape up to be incredibly entertaining because it could come down to this game between two teams that are trying to lose for draft positioning, and it's Memphis at home. I mean, there are 11 games left for the Utah Jazz where they're going to also be playing a team that is trying to lose. And if the Jazz go like 6-5, it might cost them their draft pick. I mean, that's the insanity of where we're at as it pertains to NBA basketball. Update, U.S. gets a goal. Finally, they were peltering the Latvian goalie, I should say. 2-1, U.S. takes the lead, 9:22 left in the second period. All right, we'll catch a break. I'm sorry, I just think this is hilarious. This is how we talk about the NBA now. The only compelling thing about your pro basketball team is to watch them on the nights where they're trying to lose against the other team that's also trying to lose. Right, we'll bring in Smitty right off the bat today. And then Tim McMahon. Always enjoyed Timmy stopping by. Pablo Mash joining. A little sports court. We got a busy Thursday show, and it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. What a day to have our guy in studio. What a day to have our guy in studio. The basketball storylines are starting to get really, really fun, both on the college and pro level, as we've said goodbye to football for the next 6.5 months with the Super Bowl behind us. He spent 40 years with the Utah Jazz, and now he's our very own ESPN 700's very own Richard Smith with a Black Desert Championship quarter zip on. Oh. Looking nice, Smitty. How are you, buddy?
Sorry, man. Well, This is what you get paid for when you go down and volunteer for 4 straight days on your feet all day, every day. They throw you a shirt and a pullover and go at it. And so that's.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you go to the club, if you go to the pro shop, it's not nothing because if you weren't volunteering, you'd pay like $450 for those two.
You're probably right. Yeah.
I love that golf course though. Can't wait to get out and play. There is a golf tournament going on. Maybe we'll get your thoughts on that. But look. There's a lot to do, but let's start out with what you and I were talking about off air. Now, Bobby Marks, friend of the show, and someone who's been really good to me over the years. I can text Bobby personally and with questions about cap stuff when a trade goes down, and he's always good to get back to me. And I think he's always really had a good relationship with the Jazz front office, certainly when you guys were there, right? And I know he's close with Zanuck. And there's a lot to this conversation, Smitty, but I've talked about it a bunch. So since you're here, when you hear things like Bobby Marks saying that the Jazz are compromising the integrity of the league, or that's paraphrasing, but that's essentially the sentiment that he expressed on NBA Today. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, well, I heard him. I happened to be watching at that time, and when he was talking about it, and I was nodding in agreement, watching it by myself, Spence, saying, yeah, I agree. The use of the word integrity, what came to my mind is that and we've talked about this before, Spencer. This isn't something coming out of left field from me, but you have to, at some point, my personal opinion is that you have to stand for something. And when you're in professional sports and you are asking people to pay full price for a product, whether it's the people in the stands, whether it's your sponsors, your suite holders, the advertisers on TV, all that kind of stuff, and you are obviously not trying to do your best in the game tonight to try and have a positive outcome. There's something wrong with that. Now, I understand, and you and I go back and forth on this, and we have a lively debate on it, and we can do that on friendly terms and understand where each other's coming from. I don't get the whole tanking thing. I think it's I know I'm repeating myself from other shows, but I find it antithetical to what the business is and what you're supposed to be all about. I get it. I get what they're trying to do from a business perspective, but it's when you have something like this going on, and I think it was brought up from the thing the other day with the Magic game where the Jazz had a 3-point lead going in the fourth quarter, and then they don't play any of their main guys the whole fourth quarter, and they just let that ride. And I think that's how the national guys kind of got on, maybe signaling the Jazz a little bit, because obviously there are other teams, whether it's Washington and whoever, all the teams that are doing a similar type of thing. But it's and we all gave glowing responses to the Jaren Jackson trade. I was on this show. I gave it an A+. I think he's just the right guy, the right time, with the right group. All those things line up. I think it's a great move. It's terrible that now he's having this procedure done. Okay, if he has to have something done, makes sense to do it now and get it done as soon as you can, so he has that equivalent amount of time to recoup and rehab and get ready for whatever is down the line. But I agree with Bobby. I just think it's not just the Jazz. It's a lot of teams in the NBA, and it's a lot of stuff going on in the NBA where this is the talk, Spence, and we still have 2 months to go in the season.
Yep.
I mean, that's what, man. We're not even, this weekend is the All-Star break. But we're talking about this stuff before even the All-Star break comes, let alone the second part of the season. So it's terrible that's the headlines, and that's what people are talking about, and that's what people will be watching. And it's going to get very interesting the last 8, 10, 12 games of the season. We get into April, and all these teams that are jockeying around, and for the Jazz and Washington, which both have top 8 protected picks when they're wallowing around 5, 6, 7, 7, 8, 9, whatever it's going to be. It's going to be very interesting how they all handle it because that's also going to bring up even more of this kind of discussion.
Yeah, and so a couple things just to follow up here. Because I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with Bobby about the sentiment. I just was curious as to why suddenly the target seemed to be squarely on the Utah Jazz. I mean, last night the Sacramento Kings started Precious Achiuwa, Maximin Reynald, DeMar DeRozan, Devin Carter, and Neat Clifford.
Yeah.
They held out 6 of their top 7 players.
Yeah.
They didn't even try to twist anything. It's like, oh, okay, we're playing the Jazz. They're trying to lose. We're trying to lose. So literally 6 of our top 7 players are now on the injury report. Washington traded for Trae Young 2 weeks before the trade deadline. He has played 0 games for them and probably won't play all year. They traded for Anthony Davis. Now, I believe Anthony Davis does have an injury right now, but my guess is as he gets closer and closer to being fully healthy, he will be encouraged to continue to sit on the sideline. So, and look, I love Bobby. I think he's awesome. I love that he's not a hot take guy, and he's been in front offices, and he does media, and I learn a lot from him. My question is, why do you feel like everybody across the landscape of national NBA media is honed in on what the Jazz are doing specifically?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just one of those, 15 minutes of fame, type of thing. I mean, the Jazz had that game with Orlando, and everybody sat in the fourth quarter, and then they did same thing again Monday with Miami. Yep. And the young guys happened to make some plays down the stretch and held off the Heat and won that game. Sensabaugh made a couple good plays in the last couple minutes, and they were able to squeak out the win. And then they had the game last night. Now they'll play again on a back-to-back against Portland here going into the All-Star break. Look, it's just the Jazz are one of those teams doing it. It's maybe it might be because they brought in Jaren Jackson last week, and he showed a couple of long good games where he played very well and showed this is the promise that he shows, and then they do that, the not playing the guys in the fourth quarter thing, and so look, the NBA is going to look at it, Spence, and they're going to be under the microscope again after the All-Star break. And we know last year the Jazz got whacked $100,000 fine. Also earlier this year, to be fair, Cleveland got whacked $250 by the NBA for doing a similar thing. And so Adam Silver is going to have a lot of stuff going on because it's not just the Jazz. There's 5, 6, 7 teams who are going to be doing a similar type of thing when you get into March and you get into April, and especially as they continue to evaluate this draft and guys become more certain about who they like or who they think could be real players coming out of this upcoming draft. Teams may start positioning themselves even more so with the solid idea and thought that, hey, we could get one of those guys, and we've determined that there's 5 of them or there's 7 of them or whatever the number's going to be who are going to be really good NBA players. We need to figure a way to get our hands on one of them. And so that's going to be very interesting when we get down to crunch time in the last month or so of the season, because the Jazz are just going to be one of a handful of teams who are all going to be doing the same type of thing.
I know that it's Commissioner Silver who essentially is in charge of the process to find teams. Do you know who else is involved in that process right now? I know it was Kiki Vandeweghe for a while, Joe Dumars, but who is it now? Do you know?
Now it's James Jones.
James Jones.
Who used to be with the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
He went to the NBA office.
Okay, so here's my question. The process in identifying when a team is to be fine, when a team has actually done something that is fine worthy. Because if you read the letter of the law, they could find teams every night. If they actually execute what they've put on paper, like you are not allowed to do this, hold players out, national TV, what have you, hold players out in the name of getting better draft position. the Jazz could be fine every night, but so could the Washington Wizards. The Sacramento rolls into town without 6 of their top 7 players. What exactly is fine worthy, and how do they decipher before they actually hand it down?
Well, it's a very good question, Spence, because it all really ends up being subjective to the person who's making that judgment call. 3 years ago, the NBA put out what they call the Player Participation Program Memo. It's 64 pages. It came out as a result of that previous year having several national TV games where headline-type players were held out, not because of injury, but because the team just wanted to either give them the night off, or they were playing a back-to-back, or they deemed it their time to have a rest game or load management, however you want to phrase it. And they got a lot of backlash from big-time sponsors who were saying, hey, we've been spending a lot of money all week long promoting the Saturday night game on ABC between Golden State and the Lakers, and the game comes, and all of a sudden LeBron James and Anthony Davis aren't playing for Lakers, and Stephen Curry isn't playing for Golden State, and so none of those guys are playing, and we are spent $6 million advertising the game or whatever, what's going on, and they could all play, but they're not playing it. So the commissioner, got uptight about that, okay? And he came out with this thing that when we first all read it, our initial knee-jerk reaction to ourselves as a group was, well, you can't do anything with this. Like, how are you going to enforce this? Because when it comes down to it, Spence, the bottom line is no matter what your situation is as a team, healthy guys, hurt guys, guys playing well, guys not playing well, guys having an argument with the coach, guys being in love with the coach, whatever it ends up being, all the stuff that goes into all that. The bottom line is when they go to throw the ball up to start the game tonight at 7:10 in the Delta Center, it's the 2 head coaches who decide who they want to play in the game. The commissioner can't tell them who to play in the game. The commissioner can't tell them this guy's got to come off the bench and play at least 20 minutes. The commissioner can't say Lauri Markkanen has to play. Now, they put all that in this player participation program memo, and it delineates out to the nth degree how you go about that. The Lauri Markkanens of the world are in a tier 1 group, so they have certain restrictions on when they have to play relative to national TV games and all that stuff, or the team could be in trouble with some kind of a sanction or a fine or something. But how you regulate that, how you do it, that is all, they're going to try and go to that memo, but at the end of the day, it's going to be a subjective thing by the NBA where they look at it and they don't like the optics of what's happening in a particular game. Yeah. And then you're going to see them react to that, and that's going to be more so between now and the middle of April.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the tampering stuff. We're like, hey, we are going to come down on tampering. And then everyone's like, no, tampering doesn't happen. And then at 12:01, when free agency opens, 10 deals are announced. It's like, oh, did you get on the phone in the last 60 seconds to talk to the
30-second deal?
It's like, stop telling me I'm not seeing what I'm seeing. I mean, it's always been pathetic when it comes to the messaging. When if you just have a decent brain and you pay attention, you're like, you're lying to me. Don't lie to me. But how much of the pressure do you think to find a team comes from broadcast partners? Because ultimately, it feels like the NBA right now, because conversations like this are happening all over the NBA media ecosystem. But anybody involved in the NBA family leans back on, cool, good chat. We just signed a $72 billion media deal, and people still love the playoffs. Like, that's what they lean into, where I'm going, okay, yes, congrats on your money, and the playoffs are awesome, but I will never do this job content with 5.5 months of pathetic basketball. I just won't. Yeah. I don't think it's okay. So, like, when we hear a fine, like the Cavs fine earlier this year, how much pressure do you think they get from TV partners to say, look, if we're going to pay you what we're paying you, you need to put your best product on our platform?
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt, because Adam Silver's getting all that. That's not like, the lower levels, between you and me or the guys, some other team or whatever, general managers, whatever. That's between Adam Silver and the CEO of Coca-Cola or IBM or Kia or, General Motors or whoever it is. And they're paying a lot of money not the least of which is the broadcast partners, whether it's NBC or Amazon Prime or now all the network broadcasters and the streaming platforms that are major players now financially. But they're all in that, and they want to see LeBron James on Saturday night if LeBron James is healthy. Now, you tell me he's got a twisted knee, you tell me his ankle's bothering him or whatever, okay, now we have to deal with that. But when teams put on their injury list, that's why you've seen the scrutiny the last few years of the injury report list that comes out 24 hours before, and then 12 hours before, and then 2 hours before, and they tweak it and they change it. They had the thing with Lauri Markkanen the other day. He was on the report, then he was off the report, whatever. How that happened, I don't know. But those kinds of things, the NBA office, the commissioner's office, is looking at that stuff because that really, again, not to overuse or browbeat the phrase, but the integrity of the league, of what the product you're presenting to your fans night in and night out. Now now you're getting into that area where you're telling your fans we're manipulating the process, we're deciding if we want to be in this position or how we want to place ourselves with who we play tonight. I can tell you, Spence, 100%, no doubt in my mind, when I was in an NBA front office, and I was with the Jazz all those years, we never, ever had one conversation about whether we're going to sit a guy tomorrow night, whether it was because of rest or, load management, which is kind of a new thing. But at the time, it was always about who is hurt and can't play, and whoever those guys are, we can't go with them, but the other guys are ready to go. Mm-hmm. That's the job. That's what we are here for. Okay, new mentality, new mindset nowadays, whatever. Doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean everybody has to jump on that ship. It seems like they all, for the most part, do now. Okay, but you never had these kinds of concerns about who was manipulating lineups. And as you say, Sacramento comes in last night and 6 guys are out. Who's hurt? Who's not hurt? I don't know. Whatever. It's a slippery slope that everybody's sliding down very quickly, and it's very hard to stop.
So let me follow up with a couple things here. I want to make sure I get my entire checklist with you. So when you were with the Jazz, it never felt like, and obviously for a long time, I was with the broadcast team night in and night out. Then prior to that, covering the team in a different place, and prior to that, my father was involved in the front office. So I feel like I have perspective on the fact that I can corroborate that it never felt like you were doing anything like this. Was there ever a time, because I'm remembering now in real time a text conversation I had with Dennis. Was there ever a time down the stretch you guys elected to be a little bit sneaky about wins and losses in the name of playoff matchups, right? You're looking at the scope of what's in front of you and saying, okay, if we win the next 2 games, we're going to take on the Spurs. If we lose the next 2 games, we actually might be able to get the Blazers or whatever it is. Did you guys ever go about your business that way?
No, never. And I'll tell you why, Spence, because if you were in the room with, you're going back now, obviously, but with Jerry Sloan, with Frank Layden, with Scott Layden, with Kevin O'Connor, with Dennis Lindsay, Ty Corbin, Quinn Snyder, these guys are all competitive guys. They all have a certain ethos about them where they're coming out to try and be the best they can be that particular night. Mm-hmm. Jerry Sloan was right at the top of the list because he would say, I don't care we're playing Dallas in the playoffs or we're playing the Lakers or we're playing Golden State. It doesn't matter. Our job is to go play them and do the best we can to try and have success. Hey, guess what? If we're not good enough, we're not good enough. And then we shake their hand and we go home. Now it seems like it's more about like jockeying around and trying to game the system to see like, well, we want to play those guys. We don't want to play the other guys, or we want to get in a different bracket. Hey, let me tell you, the whole thing is about being the best you can be on a competitive scale to see where you're at. And guess what, Spence? If you're not good enough, you're not good enough. I mean, this whole thing is about trying to get somewhere that maybe you don't really earn it. You just slide around and someone else opens a hole and you run through the hole before they realize it. I mean, that's, that, again, a lot of that stuff I don't like. I don't care for. Okay, call me Pollyannish, whatever, old school, whatever you want to do. But, you have to stand for something as an organization, and you have to stand for what you can do to try and maximize what your ability is night in and night out. And sometimes you're good enough and you say, hey, okay, guys, we did it. And sometimes if you're not, you have to be able to acknowledge that and be a man about it. And again, I'm not labeling this on the Jazz. This is an NBA issue at the moment with a lot of teams doing the same thing and a lot of teams going wink, wink, nod, nod. And it's really, in my opinion, it's quite distasteful when you're talking about fans paying real money to come see games or sitting down with their family at home in front of the TV for 2.5 hours to watch their team play. And you're telling them we're not going to really try the best that we can tonight. There's something there that just it doesn't sit right with me.
So a lot of really good points in there, a lot of really salient points. And I would have to go back and look because there were a few occasions where Dennis was mad at me because he would hear me say something, and he was always good to call or text. But in this particular cycle, I don't remember what year it was, but down the stretch over the final 10, 12 games, you had 3 or 4 different matchup possibilities. And then there were a couple games where I think Rudy sat, a couple games where I think maybe some other pieces sat. And I texted him, like, what's going on here? He's like, the injuries are real. He responded, he said, the injuries are real. And that was that. And I don't remember. Ultimately, I think it ended up working out in your favor. I don't know if it was Donovan's rookie year. I'd have to go sit. But I was smiling to myself as you were discussing the Jerry dynamic because Will's in on this. Will was asked after the Miami game, did you think about putting Lowry or Jaren Jackson Jr. back in? And he said no. So Will's in on whatever's going on, and I'm just smiling at the visual of somebody from the front office walking in the coach's room and saying, hey, Jerry, we have a chance to get a draft pick if you sit Carl tonight. And what Jerry would say in response to that ask, what I mean?
Right, yeah. And look, Will Hardy works very hard. He's been under a lot of pressure, with these teams the last few years that haven't been winning. He's trying to build a career. He's trying to show that he's a good coach, that he belongs at this level of coaching in the NBA. His record, is losing 2 of every 3 games, thereabouts. So to this point in time, okay, he hasn't had players. He's been under some kind of direction from ownership or the front office to play certain guys in certain times. Okay, I don't know what that is, to what extent that is. I know it's there somewhere in some manner. But he's got marching orders at some point. But I can tell you also that he's a young coach. And, Jerry Sloan, when he was Jerry Sloan, he was running the show. Like Larry owned the team, and whether it was Kevin O'Connor or whether it was Scott Layden or whether it was, Dennis Lindsay right at the end. But, everybody knew that whatever Jerry said, that's what we're going to do. So we can have a discussion, and Spence, you and I can sit here. Hey, we sit this guy out, do this, whatever. Okay. Oh, you go tell Jerry. I'm not telling Jerry. And that was a real thing because Jerry's going to go out and he's going to try and do whatever he can to win the game. Just like on the flip side, Spence, I was in the room many times when whether it was Don Sparks, our trainer, or whether it was Gary Briggs, our trainer, who would come in. And they would say, hey, Coach, so-and-so has something wrong with his ankle tonight. And Jerry would go, okay. And he said, so is he playing or not? And Jerry would never say, can you tape it up? Can you shoot him something? Can you get? I need you. Never. He would always just look at the trainer, and he would say, is he playing or he's not playing? He goes, well, I think we should probably hold him out because it's going to swell up and then blah 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 whatever. And Jerry goes, okay, so he's out. And the trainer would go, yeah, I think we should hold him out. All right. Anybody else? He goes, no, just that. Okay, all right. And so that was it. There was never any discussion about the trainers were the ones who decided because they were the medical guys. And Jerry, that was one of his great strengths, was that everybody who had a job, he let them do their job because that was their area of expertise. Mm-hmm. Just like he would always, in subtle ways, make sure that you knew that he was also the coach. So when you wanted to bring up a suggestion about what we should do in the fourth quarter about something, he would say, you're the PR guy, right? Maybe worry about the PR thing tomorrow. that kind of thing, And but everybody knew it. And that's why everybody loved him and everybody loved working for him, because they all knew that, like in this example with the trainers, he would always have their back. Whatever they said it should happen, that's what we would do, and we'd just move on. It doesn't matter. We got this guy tonight. We don't have him tonight, whatever it is. And we go out and we do what we can, and we're either good enough tonight or we're not. And nowadays it just seems like more teams are shucking and jiving and trying to move the chess pieces around on the board and trying to, as I said a minute ago, trying to game the system in some manner, whether it's the standings or the upcoming draft, and it's kind of hard to watch sometimes.
So, and if you're not comfortable taking a shot at this, I totally understand. But I'm just wondering behind the scenes, because it's Jerry was one of one. He just was Jerry, right? And anybody who was lucky enough to know the Jerry way. I'm not trying to compare, right? Because it is a different era. It's a different ownership group. It's a different front office. It's a different coaching staff. But as I said, Will is in on this. This is not something that has been decided by one person. This is not Will going rogue to decide to sit his best players when they have a lead in the fourth quarter. So do you think that – I just wonder how this is deciphered behind the scenes and how it's communicated. Like, is this Ryan Smith saying, okay, I'm the owner, and we're going to lose games because we need this draft pick? Is this Austin and Danny Ainge? I don't even know what Zanuck's role is anymore. Kind of feel bad for him because that's my guy. I love Jay-Z, right? But how do you think this has gone down? And do they just call Will in and say, look, this is the deal. You're going to do what we tell you to do to manipulate the lineups to lose these basketball games. Like, how do you think this is communicated? It's kind of confusing.
I don't know how that goes, Spence. I'm not in the room, so I wouldn't want to speculate. The one thing that's obvious is that last year they signed Will Hardy to this long contract extension, right? It was 6 years, a total of 6 years. They added 4 years on or whatever it was. And so they obviously had some discussion with him where they said, we're willing to commit to you on a long-term basis. And I think it might be, we'd have to check on this, might be the longest existing contract at the moment.
It is.
In the NBA.
It is. Yeah. I can tell you that it is, yeah.
Okay. So the Jazz obviously went into that and said, we're willing to commit to you for this amount of time. And my assumption, my guess, is that in return, you have to understand this is how we are going to do it, A, B, C, D. And if you don't want to do that, then, we'll have to have another discussion. My belief, and again, wasn't in the room, so I can't say it definitively, but my own gut tells me that some version of that kind of conversation took place when Ryan Smith and then Danny Ainge came in and with Quinn Snyder. And they said, we're going to trade all these guys and we're going to move it out and we're going to tear it down. And I believe somewhere in there was some kind of, Quinn reaction saying, well, then, if that's what you're doing, I'm not going to stick around for that.
Yeah.
We've got too good of a thing we've built to this point, and you're telling me you want to take it down. So if that's going to be the deal, okay, we just shake hands, and I go out stage left and you go stage right, and we all move on.
Yeah,
I think it was something like that. Now, again, I don't know, but at that time, if you remember, Quinn Snyder still had 2 years left on his contract, and so if he was a great coach, which they said he was in that infamous press conference they had announcing his departure, why would you let one of the best coaches in the NBA leave when he's still under contract for 2 years?
Yeah,
and you're touting all of his his merits and the good things he does as a coach, but we're also going to let him go. So something like that, So Will Hardy is in this with them. Okay, he's trying to build a career, and they've told him this is the outline of how we're going to do it. And so far, hey, last week was one of the few bright spots they've had in this whole thing so far. Right? They get Jaren Jackson. That's a big time deal. So now if they can execute the draft in June, and then if they can execute and make the decision that Jazz fans would hope they could make on keeping Walker Kessler in July in his restricted free agency year, then we could be looking at this team in September going, this is a very interesting team, and this brings a lot of hope. And okay, now everybody's on the train, and here we go. It's pulling out of the station.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, privy to some of the Quinn stuff as far as why I didn't want to stick around. And out of respect, I've never really brought much of it on air. I'll just say I always thought it was kind of a bad sign. And I'm biased towards both Dennis and Quinn, right? Individually, because I know they had their stuff together. But the fact that two very smart basketball people, in my opinion, had just a few meetings with a new ownership group, and they're like, no, we're good. I always thought that was kind of a bad sign. Potentially the most awkward press conference I've ever seen when Quinn was leaving. But we'll leave that off air. One more thing for this segment, because we got to catch a break. I have misbehaved with the clock. We have seen Jaren Jackson Jr. for 3 games now with the Jazz, and he's looked awesome. 25 minutes against Orlando. He had 22 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, 3 steals. And then you look over at the Miami game. He played 25 minutes. He had 22 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals. And then last night, the final time we'll see him this year, 22 minutes, 23 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and a block. For 3 games, like for a player that has not practiced with his teammates, I think there's a lot to like about what we've seen so far. Is that fair to say?
Yeah,
would you agree?
No, exactly. Yeah. Especially since he joined the team on the road, Spence. So when on the road, you don't have a lot of practice time. You don't have a lot of the amenities that you have at home where you can actually learn and spend time with coaches, going over stuff on the floor and in the film room and all of that. And so for him to do that, and 2 or 3 of two of those games were on the road, and then the game last night, he's shown that's who that wasn't an anomaly. That was who he can be every night going forward for the Jazz. And you have him on one side and Lauri Markkanen on the other. And then if you get Kessler back and all of that, and how you work those guys together and you weave them in and out and always have 2 of them on the floor, sometimes all 3, depending on matchups and all. Jaren Jackson's a very versatile guy and very talented. That is a glimpse of what the Jazz can be going forward. Obviously the rest of this year might be out because of the surgery thing, but certainly looking forward to next year.
Do you know? Okay, I need your help here. You're a golf guy. The leader in the clubhouse after one round for the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, Rio. Do you know how to say his last name?
No, I don't know.
I think it's Hisastoon. I don't know.
Oh, Hasatsune.
Oh, there you go. Boom.
Hasatsune.
Thank you,
Yes,
Smitty.
sorry.
So that guy's leading because it's time now for our.
Yeah, he was one of the leaders last week.
Yeah,
too.
time now for our You Went to Golf PGA Tour update. Smitty just said his name. He's leading. He carded a 62. I should probably learn his name. He's the leader in the clubhouse. Sam Burns, 9 under par, carded a 63. And then a bevy of really good players. This is a good leaderboard at 600 par. It's Russell Henley, Jordan Spieth, Jake Knapp, Sepp Straka, Akshay Bhatia, Chris Gotterup, and Patrick Rogers. Tony Finau, 5 under par through 14. Okay, Tony, he's in the top 10, as is Minwoo Lee, Siwoo Kim, Tommy Fleetwood, Maverick McNeely, Jacob Bridgman, and Nick Taylor. This is a good leaderboard shaping up at the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Love to see Tony up there. I want to remind you to join You Into Golf for the President's Day weekend sale by Worldwide Golf. Save 25% on all clearance apparel, 20% on clearance bags and shoes, and get Prior Gen Callaway, TaylorMade, and Bridgestone balls for just $4.99 a dozen. Swing into You Into Golf, trusted by golfers since 1971 and home of the 90-day satisfaction guarantee. You Into Golf, get there. All right, more with Smitty coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. All right, when we started the show, the U.S. hockey team was tied with Latvia at 1 goal apiece. Our very own Sean O'Connell was very worried, and I said, Sean, this game is going to end 5-2 U.S., and we bet a baklava shake on it. It's currently 5-1 U.S. I need Latvia to score 1 goal, and then we're all eating baklava shakes tomorrow. Richard Smith is live in studio. All right, great stuff, segment 1, Smitty. I wanted to get your take on this, though, and this is where I started the show. And it's hilarious that this is how we're talking about NBA basketball. But actually, it's the only thing that's intriguing if you're a Jazz fan, outside of, some ace moments or whatever. Maybe Bryce hasn't. Things like that are still things we'll watch for, right? Moments here or there. But they have joined the ranks of NBA teams. And by my count, there are 10 teams. Chris Mannix wrote about this for Sports Illustrated. Tom Haberstroh wrote about this for Yahoo, and I think McMahon, who's going to join us at 3:30, wrote about this as well. Everyone believes there are 10 teams the rest of the way that are going to manipulate lineups or have random injuries or players don't travel in order to lose games. The Jazz have 27 games left. Of the 27 games they have left, 11 of them are against these other 10 teams that are also unserious about competing. So it's going to be hilarious in a way. Like last night, as I referenced, Sacramento rolls into town and they sit 6 of their 7 best players. The Jazz are 7th right now. They're not last. They're at 7. They're dangerously close to potentially losing this asset. And even if they end at 7, there's a small percentage that they drop to 9 and then OKC gets the pick. Yep. So in these 11 games, what do you think we're going to see? I know it's hard to predict. But.
No, it's going to be very It's not going to be very pretty for the fans, because what you're going to see are a lot, especially as you get closer to the end of the season, Spence, you're going to see a lot of the G League guys being brought up on their 10-day calls or brought up and put into the lineups, and you're going to have fans who are paying full price. The Jazz and all these other teams, the Wizards and everybody else, New Orleans, they're not discounting the tickets, and they're charging you half price for the tickets at the end of March. When one of these teams rolls in, they're still charging full price, and they're charging the advertisers and all. That's one of the things that just seems like it's not quite right. Somehow you're not servicing the fans and the purpose of having your games played at all. But you're going to have guys you don't recognize. You're going to have guys who you never heard of before that are going to be playing in the games. This thing, when they play each other, to your point, is going to be fascinating to watch how each team handles it. And, there's going to be somebody who's going to fall, quote, above that cut line, and they're not going to be happy about it, and whether it's their fans or whether it's internally, people are going to be upset about how they handled their situation. But again, Spence, to me, then it starts getting in that whole area where you're trying to finagle things and move the chess pieces around where they don't belong and whatever, instead of just doing your business and coming to work and doing what you're supposed to do and let the chips fall where they may. And and usually, I think in life, Spence, in general, if you do that, more often than not, the things happen the way they're supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Yeah.
But having said that, it's going to be very fascinating those last 12, 15 games of the season when all these teams are jockeying for those spots.
Tell me, and then I've got a couple of college hoops questions I want to get to with you. But if we're sitting on our couch come springtime, watching the draft lottery, and once again, after all of this, the Jazz drop and they're drafting 8, what are we going to say?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, there are going to be good players this year. There are going to be good players in the top 6, 7, 8 of the draft, maybe more than that. The kid, I'm fascinated by the kid from Illinois, who was not recruited by anybody last year and coming out of, a podunk high school in Kansas, and, Illinois takes him, and, they don't know how much he's going to play at all, whatever. And he comes out both barrels blazing. And now he, if the draft were held tomorrow, he would possibly be a top 10 pick.
Keaton Wagler.
Yeah, Keaton Wagler. He looks like he's got everything. He's a good size at 6'6", and he can handle the ball, makes all the right decisions, and can use either hand and get in the lane, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, 46 against Purdue.
Yeah.
That's kind of the game.
At Purdue.
Yeah. That's the game that kind of burst him on the scene.
Yeah, but he's been playing like that all year. And so you're going to get players like that maybe people haven't heard of that could be good, solid NBA players. And where that falls in the draft, hey, look, that's why you have the lottery. That's why it's, Dallas, lucked in to a thing, last year, and San Antonio the year before with a couple of generational type players. Okay, I don't know if there's anybody like Wembanyama or Flag this year, but there are, you always hear about Carlos Boozer's son, Cam Boozer at Duke, and the Banza kid, and the Peterson kid at Kansas at the top of the draft. But there are 4, 5, 6 other guys who are going to be very good players. The kid who just broke his hand in Carolina, Caleb Wilson, is a very good player. He's going to be right up there as well. So this is going to be they're going to be good players to be had. And obviously for a team like the Jazz, depending on where they're picking and where they want to slot in a talent with the guys that they hope to bring back. And when I say hope, I'm referring to Walker Kessler in the summer as restricted free agent. If they can piece all that together, then it's going to be exciting for Jazz fans to watch that kind of a team come next fall.
So I have a confession to make before we get to some college basketball. I was, it was Tuesday, and I just saw a headline. I think it was Brandon Ingram replaces Steph Curry in the All-Star game. And I went, it's All-Star weekend. Oh, my gosh. Yeah. It used to be my favorite thing in the world. I used to track it all year. I wanted to be free Saturday night so I could sit down, or maybe lucky enough to go. I think I've been to 9 or 10. I know you've been to dozens. And, okay, who's going to play? Who made the team from the Jazz? Who made the team from the Knicks? Who do we get? Is Jeremy Evans is in the slam dunk contest, or whatever it is, I couldn't be less interested in it now because, look, here's the deal. If you don't care, I don't care, all right? And you don't care, so therefore I don't care. What do you make of what used to be like this unbelievable celebration of this awesome league that now is nothing more than window dressing that contain athletes that couldn't be less interested to participate?
Well, to me, Spence, it's a little bit, not to get too esoteric about it, but I find it's a little bit, like a little bit comparative to our society in general, where it actually, back then when you're talking about the All-Star game 20 or 30 years ago, where guys actually came and competed, and it was East and West, and you actually had some kind of camaraderie, and you actually were competitive in that regard and wanted to win every time you stepped on the floor. Now there's so much money involved. There's so many cross-references, meaning guys who are playing with each other as younger kids in AAU systems and all that. And then they get to the NBA and they're 22, 23, 24 years old, making $10 million a year or whatever. And it just doesn't mean as much to them because they've been through all this stuff for so many years and on so many different platforms. And then that you see that in the games where guys don't want to go at each other and they don't want to get hurt. I agree with you 100%. Maybe I've aged out of it. Maybe that's it. Because I have been to, I'm not even sure, I'm going to guess off that, maybe 30-ish, 35 All-Star games, something. I mean, I've been to a lot. And a lot of times I was there working with our players and guys who were involved in it. But you're exactly right. I didn't even know it's All-Star weekend, and yet it's the week after the Super Bowl and the same week as the AT&T golf tournament, and there's stuff going on in spring training for baseball starts next week, and it just seems there are other things that are overshadowing it, and it may be because your Joe Average fan is looking at it the same way you're describing, Spence, and saying, yeah, I kind of been there, done that, and if they're not going to play hard and they're going to change all these gimmicky things now with the world team and the two U.S. I don't even know what that is. The two U.S. teams are having whatever the setup is going to be. It's going to be interesting how it's received and how it's pulled off because I think it's a a gamble the NBA is taking to try and shake it up quite a bit. And I think there's a lot of unknowns about how it's going to be received by Joe Average fan watching over the course of the 3-day weekend.
Last thing, and I'll set you loose. The dunk contest is Carter Bryant, Keyshawn Johnson, Jackson Hayes, and Jace Richardson. Like, what the hell is going on?
And how about the news item a couple weeks ago was Mac McClung is not going to participate this year. That was the big news item. Like, oh no, Mac McClung is not going to participate. Oh no, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me?
It's wild how irrelevant a once upon a time, unbelievably exciting weekend has now become. Last thing, then we'll cut you loose. You and I were down in Provo last weekend. It was good to see you across the court.
Yeah,
wave at you.
Hi to your dad.
Yeah. So, look, I don't really care to talk about BYU's team right now. We don't have time for that. But I do want to ask you about AJ.
Yeah.
Because to see it up close is a different thing. I mean, he looks like McGrady to me. He looks like a young McGrady. And remember when McGrady came to the NBA out of high school, everybody said, he's got to put on some strength and weight, and he did. And he became impossible to cover, one of the better isolation scorers in pro basketball. Now, I always hesitate to do the whole he's going to be the next McGrady or whatever, but a lot of people love the comps. You referenced the Darren Peterson thing. If the Jazz finally get the lottery luck that we've never had, and we're sitting on our couch in the spring, and boom, number one pick, Utah Jazz, which of these prospects do you think fits in best with this group?
Well, yeah, that's going to be a good call. Obviously, the Darren Peterson thing is going to hinge a lot on all the medical stuff and what's going on. And is this just, I don't know anything about Darren Peterson high school level, so I don't know if he played every game in high school and was killing it every game and didn't have any problems. And these are just glitches his freshman year. Again, remember, Kyrie Irving at Duke, only played, I think,
8 or 9 games.
Yeah, and then didn't play. And there was, concern about him and whatever, just take him, and we see how he's turned out, as a Hall of Fame level type player when he's healthy. And so, Peterson would be great because a backcourt guy. Dabansa would be great because he's shown he's a really creative guy and really cares about. I've been to several of the BYU practices this year. He's really all in on the team and working and trying to be, a real guy. And so I know that, and I know Kevin Young really likes him a lot just as a prospect who wants to work and get better. So those two guys. I know Cam Boozer since literally the day he was born, and he's also a real guy and is all in on the team and playing the right way, and he gets that from his dad. And so those are three guys. You can't go wrong with any of them. It just depends on how your team views them and what kind of hole you want to try and fill with what the talent is that they bring. That's going to be the interesting part. Come the draft lottery, which will be the middle of May, and then they'll have about a month to try and figure out what they're going to do with the position they have at that point in time.
Just a quick update for you. Ludacris will perform on Friday night, and Shabuzi will perform on Saturday.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Are you serious?
Yep.
Shabuzi on Saturday night.
Yeah.
I got to change my plans.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yep.
I was going to do laundry Saturday night. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I got to figure that out.
Changes everything when
Yes,
you think about it. Hey, great to see you. Okay, good insight today. Be well. We'll chat soon, okay?
Spence Checketts, ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
Thank you.
The great Richard Smith. We'll catch a break. Tim McMahon, Ban McMahon, joins us coming up on the other side of a Thursday edition of The Drive right here on ESPN 700. The Utah Jazz have released their injury report for the game tonight. Keontae George is still nursing an ankle sprain. Jaren Jackson Jr., as our next guest reported, is not just out for tonight, he's out for the season. And Lauri Markkanen is out tonight for what's being characterized as rest. Tim McMahon, ESPN. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Howdy, partner. How you doing?
I'm good. So your instant reaction to the Jazz injury report tonight is what?
I mean, listen, man, we understand what the Jazz are doing. We also understand they're one of several teams that are in this situation and utilizing these sort of strategies. I do think that it's not necessarily accurate or appropriate to say that this Jaren Jackson Jr. situation is a tanking tactic. He has a non-cancerous growth in his knee, and if he does not have it surgically removed, it will continue to grow and expand. It's something they flagged in the physical. He wanted to play in a few games. Obviously he played very well, but not in the fourth quarters, and now he's going to go ahead and get that addressed over the All-Star break. I don't have a medical degree. I don't know if he could have put it off until the end of the season, but given the situation, the circumstances, it would have been a pretty silly thing to do. So here we are, and it's not going to be a real fun last couple months of the season. Adam Silver is going to be asked a lot about tanking when he addresses the media at All-Star Weekend. The Jazz kind of become poster boys of this, even though they've got plenty of company.
And that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about today. We're going to have Bobby Marks join us next week, and Bobby's a good friend of the show and somebody who's been a good resource for me. When a trade goes down, I can text him, and it'll help me understand, some of the numbers and the cap stuff. But obviously, Tim, a lot of people around here weren't thrilled to hear Bobby Marks talk about the Jazz and their lack of integrity as it pertains to their approach. A lot of people have written about the number of teams tanking this early, and most people believe the number is 10. But when it comes to the national conversation, it does seem like a lot of people have honed in on what the Jazz are doing specifically. Can you help me understand why that is?
Well, I'm part of the national conversation.
Yeah, you are.
I've tried to bring some balance to that. I would say I think there's the spotlight's on the Jazz for a few reasons. Number one, because this is multiple years of this for them. There's been a couple years in there where they were not committed to this until midway through the season. And then number two, there's just a different spotlight on the Jazz because they owe Oklahoma City that top 8 protected pick. It went from 10 to 10 to 8, and now it's going to turn to dust. Having said that, you know who else owes a top 8 protected pick? It's the Washington Wizards. Mm-hmm. And listen, Trae Young was playing basketball for the Atlanta Hawks. He was traded, and now he's been out since he's been traded, and I don't think there's much anticipation he's going to play again this season. Anthony Davis, the Mavericks announced, would be healed from his hand injury in 6 weeks, which would be late February. The Wizards say, I think it's more like 6 to 10 weeks. So that's blatant with it. The Pacers are another fascinating situation. And look, Tyrese Halliburton got hurt. It was a gap year for them, but they've really committed to bottoming out because this is a great draft. So they're trying to get a top 4 pick in this draft, and they were trying to get a top 4 pick in this draft before they traded their pick and made it unprotected 5 through 9 only in this draft. So even more so now they're hoping for, and it's a coin flip, even if you're the worst record in the league. But so I get why the spotlight is on the Jazz, but they're far from alone. And by the way, the team that traded Jaren Jackson Jr. is pretty strongly committed to a tank. The Memphis Grizzlies gave up a 10-point lead while going scoreless in the last 4 minutes the other night in Golden State. So again, it's a miserable situation. Misery loves company, and there's plenty of it around the league.
And at one point, I turned on last night's game between the Jazz and the Kings to see Daquan Plowden, Dylan Caldwell, Isaiah Stevens, Devin Carter, and Neek Clifford on the court for Sacramento. Sacramento rolled into town last night and sat 6 of their 7 top players. So, to your point, the Jazz are far from alone. Here's my question. What's the process that goes down for the league to decide, yes, we are going to fine you? Because it's very obvious what you're doing here.
Yeah, and those are questions that Adam Silver's going to need to answer this weekend during his press conference, and I think very directly during Board of Governors discussions and whatever other discussions there are with the league. My understanding is the league office in communication with teams that are in this kind of situation, like the Utah Jazz, have basically said, hey, we don't want just a bunch of guys sitting. We'd rather have guys playing limited minutes than not at all. And then, the Jazz had guys playing limited minutes, and then that became a massive controversy. I mean, the simple fact is tanking is the biggest problem the NBA has right now. Adam Silver needs to come up with a solution. The league office needs to come up with a way to address this. It is out of control because you do have a full third of the league blatantly tanking, and we've got 2 months left in the regular season.
And when you look at the schedule, because here's the thing, Tim, as we sit here today, the Jazz are 7th in the lottery order. I mean, they're not 1 or 2, they're 7th. And so they're dangerously close to being on the level where they could lose this asset. And we were going over the schedule earlier. They've got 27 games left. And if we operate off the number 10, the teams that, most people believe are not serious about winning, 11 of their 27 games are against those teams. Like, this is not far from a guarantee. And look, again, Sacramento's like, oh, you want to tank? Okay, we'll just rest everybody. Down the stretch with these 11 games, it's hilarious to surmise that it's going to be a battle of 2 teams actually trying to lose. How are they going to do this? They're dangerously close to losing this pick.
It's going to be, honestly, there's going to be just some disgusting basketball played. But by the way, this is not like, oh my gosh, teams are suddenly doing this. This has been going on for years.
Yep.
Listen, and the Oklahoma City Thunder, the defending champions, who aren't real thrilled about some of the tactics that the Jazz are using, they use some pretty blatant tanking tactics themselves when Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had the longest running case of plantar fasciitis in NBA history, and they ended up getting Chet Holmgren on the roster. It was a quick tank. It was 2 years, but they did it. And honestly, Sam Presti was very creative while he was doing it. One of the things that he kind of came up with was 10-day call-ups from the G League of guys who weren't very good G League players. So you might see some of that. You might see some G League reserves suddenly become NBA starters. That's happened before. I don't know what else teams can come up with, but trust me, there's a lot of thought being put into it in front offices around the league.
So, and look, to your point, and we talked about this earlier, and look, there's one story is David Robinson was legitimately hurt. Another story is he was ready to come back, and the Spurs said, go watch this senior at Wake Forest. David Robinson, like John and Carl, loved to play 82. And you look at the games played in his career, and this is back in the 90s. It's 82, 82, 82, 68, 82, 82. And then in 1996, 1997, 6 games played. They get number 1 overall. They draft Tim Duncan. The rest is history. So because this has gone on for, quite frankly, decades, I'm curious as to why this is suddenly such a hot button topic where it's getting so much attention. Is it because of the number of teams and this early in the calendar? What are your thoughts on that?
I do think it's because it is worse than ever. I think that the NBA flattening the lottery odds like they did has backfired. All it's done is increase the number of teams that are tanking. This has been a major issue for the league for a long time. I just think it's never been worse.
Okay. All right, I see. So let's actually hone in on the one thing that has been really fun, and it is a truncated space. But for a player that joined a team on the road and has never practiced with his teammates and doesn't really know his head coach, Jaren Jackson Jr., over the course of 3 games, looked like the best player on the court at times. Orlando, 25 minutes, 22 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, 3 steals. Miami, 25 minutes, 22 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals. And then the final time we'll see him was last night against Sacramento. 22 minutes, 23 points, 4 boards, 2 assists, a steal, and a block. Like, he has looked awesome, Tim. So the silver lining to all of this is this little peek we got into the Jazz new player, and I don't know that it could have gone any better. What do you think?
Yeah, they made it proven for him, and if that is something that continues over 75 games and 32 minutes a night next year, and in the years to come, it's going to be well worth the price. But the Jazz took a major swing because they think he's a needle-moving acquisition, a guy who's entering his prime, has been an all-star, has been a defense player of the year, really fits with the core that they've put in place. And, they are extremely excited about him. And based on everything I've heard and based on everything that he said, he's excited about being in Utah and the potential for this thing moving forward.
So you have been the guy that has been able to give us updates on Walker, and there were some people that surmised this deal was done in anticipation of Walker leaving. You and I talked about this last week. That's not my understanding, and I feel like Jaren Jackson Jr. plays better with a center like Walker Kessler. And since you and I last spoke, there have been some reports about what is a kind of a gap between Walker Kessler's camp and what the Utah Jazz believe he's worth. So just give us an update, if there is one, the anticipation of what the Jazz have planned for the future with Walker Kessler.
Yeah, I've been telling you guys, there's going to be, going into restricted free agency, a significant gap between what the Jazz believe his value is and what they believe his value, maybe in CAA and Walker, what his camp believes his value is. And, I think that's a gap of, honestly, I think it's more than $15 million a year. I think the Jazz feel like somewhere in the $25 million range is an appropriate number, and I think that Walker and his agents believe it should be more in the $40+ million range. He is a restricted free agent, so, and I'm sorry, I gotta walk back over, so you might hear some traffic in the background.
You're
but
good.
He's a restricted free agent, and the Jazz are willing to play out that process. It might not be a friendly, warm, fuzzy process. That's kind of the nature of restricted free agency. The fact that Washington made the trade for Anthony Davis certainly eliminates one potential suitor. I forgot who else.
Indiana. Indiana.
There you go. Indiana was the other one. And look, it was reported that the Jazz turned down an offer from Indiana. I think that the Clippers got for Victor Zubac. It was similar, but not quite as sweet. I don't think there was the 2026 potential for 5 to 9 in the Jazz's offer. I'm not 100% certain about that, but that was basically my understanding.
Are you in a F1 car currently? Are you at an F1 race?
No.
Where are you?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm at LA Live, and I was supposed to have the Sports Center hit at 5:30, and I just got a text that they need me at the top of the hour. So I'm walking back from the hotel over, so I didn't, I was planning to be settled in the hotel room, but I had to, no disrespect, but Sports Center is a little bit more important than you are.
That hurts my feelings, but they also pay your bills, and you're a dad, so I understand it. So before I set you loose to actually do your job, look, this is not a new topic, but I sat down a couple of nights ago to watch Lakers Spurs, and I know the Lakers were without Luka and LeBron and Austin Reeves, but whenever I hone in on Wembanyama and when you see what it looks like when he is fully engaged, he had 17 straight points in the first. He had 25 points in the first quarter. And I know all the attention is on Oklahoma City, and it should be. They're the defending champs. But does it feel like maybe the wait for Victor, because he's going to take over moment, is no longer something we need to wait for?
He is an MVP candidate right now, and he's going to be an MVP candidate for a long, long time. And I had the pleasure of being, on Media Row for that. Getting an up-close look at that. And, the guy had 25 points in 8 minutes, and the crazy thing is, that's not even the most impressive Victor Wembanyama performance that I've seen in person this year. I was also at the opener in Dallas when, there was 6, 7, 8 times during a 40-point, 15-rebound, 5-block performance that I'm literally like putting my hands on my head thinking, I've never seen anybody do that on a basketball floor before in my life. And I watch hundreds of games every single year. This guy, we've never seen anything like that at 7'5", with that kind of balance and that kind of athleticism, that kind of skill, those instincts, and the competitiveness. He wants all the smoke, and he wants to be the face of the league, and he's got a real good chance of that happening.
Yeah, it's really impressive. All right, buddy, thanks for squeezing us in. Have a good Sports Center hit, and we'll chat soon. Thanks, Tim.
Appreciate you.
All right, Tim McMahon, ESPN, part of their national NBA coverage. As he pointed out, he is part of the national conversation. And I'll give Tim credit because I've seen his NBA Today hits and his Sports Center hits. He is not one that has leaned into this whole, like, let's hone in only on the Jazz. The Jazz are the only ones that are doing this because they're not. There are 9 other teams that are doing this, and it is a massive problem. It's just not only a Utah Jazz problem. If you missed that, because there was a little issue with the sound, let me underscore what Tim just said concerning Walker Kessler. When it comes to NBA negotiations, and certainly a restricted free agent will have no choice as to whether or not he leaves because the Jazz can match anything, Tim just reported that there is a $15 million difference between what Walker Kessler's people believe he is worth and what the Jazz believe he is worth. That's not that, like, that number. Typically, okay, $2 million here, $5 million here, whatever. We're going to give you some incentives and some bonuses if you play this many games or block this many shots. Okay, let's come to some sort of agreement. We're only $5 million apart. $15 million apart is a massive, massive gap. So it does beg the question as to whether or not Walker Kessler, once he is, well, I'm going to say allowed to talk to teams. They're always talking all the time. We talked about that with Smitty earlier. So to Tim's point, Washington trades for Anthony Davis. Washington was a team that a lot of people linked to the interest in Walker because they badly needed big. They don't anymore. Indiana reportedly called the Jazz and essentially offered the same package that that the Clippers took for Ivica Zubac, right? So Zubac is in Indiana, AD is in Washington. Those are 2 suitors that are taken off the table. I'd have to look at the Laker cap stuff because we know the Lakers want Walker Kessler because they have Jackson Hayes playing center right now. But it does beg the question, if Walker Kessler's able to get a deal that pays him $40 million per year to start and incrementally goes up, and the Jazz think he's a $25 million player, a $15 million gap is a big, big gap. Not a math major, but that's a bigger gap than I've heard reported. There were some reports earlier this week that the Jazz and Walker Kessler, they don't agree about Walker's value on the open market. But to hear Tim McMahon, who's the guy that would know, to say that it's a $15 million gap, and herein lies the problem. The Jaren Jackson Jr. trade was made with the belief that this front court with Walker, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Lauri Markkanen would be problematic for other teams, and it would be. Because for the conversation about, Jaren Jackson Jr. and what position does he play, and, for a guy that's that big and that mobile, and he really is, and Jazz fans have seen it over the past 3 games, is he better served as like a small ball center in the NBA? Because that's kind of the way the league has gone for some teams. Not every team. I mean, not all paths to, competing or playoff basketball are created the same. It's kind of like when the Jazz elected to play Gobert and Fave next to each other. When Gobert just really burst on the scene, and it became very relevant pretty quickly that Rudy was ready to play. So the Jazz move on from Enes Kanter, or Freedom, or whatever the hell that is these days, and they elect to go with Rudy and Fave. Rudy as the 5 and Derek Favors as the 4. And I had Dennis Lindsay on the show the week they elected to move off of Enes Kanter in the name of playing those 2 bigs together. And Dennis said, look, we've decided that we are a rushing football team. We're fine scoring 72 points as long as the other team scores 68. Like, there are different ways to do this, even though a lot of people believe NBA basketball is now comprised of teams that, in a way, kind of play similar basketball with 5 out, isolation, beat your man off the dribble, defense collapses, kick out, 3-point shot, maybe some pick and roll action. The Jazz run a lot of dribble handoff and pick and roll. But there are still nuances to the way that you can go about this. And remember, Memphis elected to draft Zach Edey, the big kid out of Purdue. Memphis decided to draft Zach Edey, the big kid out of Purdue, who is the NCAA Player of the Year, who is only a center. He's not one of these like, hey, he can guard multiple. No, like Zach Edey is maybe one of, I don't know, 7 or 8 guys in the league that are only a center, and they drafted Zach with the thought of playing him alongside Jaren Jackson Jr. Now, the other interesting wrinkle in this is what Yusuf Nurkic has done this year for the Jazz. So is that your contingency plan? If Walker Kessler goes out on the open market and finds a team that is willing to pay him $40 million per year, is that too expensive for the – because I'll look at the numbers during the break. I think because Jaren Jackson Jr.'s contract goes up to like $52 million next year or something like that. I'll pull up the numbers during the break. Lowry is a max player. Keontae George has played himself into consideration for $25-30 million a year. If you are faced with the reality of having to pay Walker $40 million a year, I think you're creeping into luxury tax. And where you don't want to be as an NBA owner is paying luxury tax for a team that's not in contention to win a championship. And while I absolutely believe the Jazz are very ready to take a massive step forward next year, they're miles away, a marathon away from Oklahoma City and San Antonio specifically, and some other teams that we could throw in the mix there, maybe Detroit. And Boston gets Tatum back. What does that look like? So the Jazz will be really, really good next year, but they're not winning a championship, like not anytime soon. My point is, if what Tim is reporting is correct, and I have no reason to ever believe Tim McMahon will say anything on the show that isn't correct, it feels like there's a legitimate chance the Jazz could be outbid. Or I guess what I should say is the market would dictate paying Walker a number that I don't think the Jazz would want to pay, because then you have your team. You've got Walker Kessler, Lauri Markkanen, Jaren Jackson Jr., Keontae George, and Ace Bailey as your core, right? Those 5 players as your core. Hopefully Darren Peterson or A.J. DeBonsa as a part of that core. But is that team a championship-winning team? You have to do that calculation before you decide to match that contract, because the luxury tax penalties are now different and new and punitive in a way that no NBA owner wants to go near it. And that's why we've seen a lot of NBA owners break down teams in the name of following the new luxury tax rules, the new apron rules, first, second apron. And if you're a repeat luxury taxpayer, you have penalties, losing draft picks, inability to make trades with certain financial mechanisms. It's not like it used to be where you're just writing a check to the league. It's different now where you're writing that check to the league, and it's very, very expensive, but you're also losing your ability to have flexibility to maintain talent, add talent to your roster. That's an interesting wrinkle, and that's something to watch out for come unrestricted free agency time. Porter, I just saw your text.
Excited?
No. Is it real?
I think so.
All right. Stay tuned. Show's about to take a massive left-hand turn in the wrong direction coming up on the other side on ESPN 700. Handy and handy. But our next guest, it's our guy. Let him pick his own walk-up song today to talk a little RSL. Trey Fitzgerald. Happy Thursday, Trey. What's going on, man?
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious. I am absolutely speechless that you would tell Porter to choose that as my music.
Oh, don't do that. Don't do that. We always give you the option to choose what you want. But did that make you feel patriotic? Is my question.
Not as patriotic as like the 6 people dancing around in a pre-taped empty gymnasium or wherever they tape that thing. Whatever, man. It's insane. Everything is insane.
Everything is insane, but we are getting ready to start the soccer season, which of course is always very much a marathon and not a sprint at all. Just give us a little peek behind the curtains as we're just days away from the first match. How are things going out there?
Yeah, it seems like it's all coming together, Spence. It's you've seen kind of a flurry of player announcements here at the tail end of a very short preseason, really a 6-week preseason basically, and RSL kicks off in Vancouver a week from Saturday, and MLS Cup is going to be December 18th. So this MLS season that does include a World Cup break in most of June and part of July is going to be the most marathon of all the marathon MLS seasons. It's RSL's 22nd. It is Major League Soccer's 31st. I do want to pass along Pablo's apologies that he got pulled away from this appointment with you. He's going to hopefully hop on with you after the final preseason match against the Galaxy tomorrow in Palm Springs. But as I heard you and Chris and you and Andy talk about a little bit earlier this week, you've got Morgan Guilavogui, Juan Manuel Sanabria, Juan Jose Arias, Stein Spearing, Sergey Solans, and Lucas Engel is 6 kind of new players that have been added over the last month, most of them the last 10, 14 days. And I would say probably 5 of those 6 players, Spence, would be starters in a hypothetical ideal starting 11. But, you know, a couple of the guys need to get their visas sorted out. There's injuries. So Pablo told Dunny on yesterday's SiriusXM show that it might be 4 or 5 games into the season before we see kind of the everybody available and healthy. But it's all coming together. The vibes are immaculate as always. And I do think everybody understands that they cannot afford to kind of stumble out of the gates and lose points at home, drop points at home like they did, you know, really the first probably 3 months of last year.
Okay, let's get to know these new players a little bit. And, you know, this won't shock you, but I haven't been moonlighting watching RC Lens tape, and I don't really know much about the soccer that's played in France. But Morgan Guilavogui is the new designated player that a lot of people are very, very excited about. So let's get to know this new player a little bit. Trey, what should we know?
Yeah, Morgan G, as I think we'll attempt to make him known, because unless you're a French speaker, that last name maybe has some complications. Guilavogui is how you say it in French. I do not speak French. So he's 27 years old, plays for the Guinean national team, Guinea, Guinea. He's spent most of his career in France, either League 2 or League 1. League 1 was where he was at with Lens over the last half a season. He did have a very successful season as the leading scorer for St. Pauli in the Bundesliga a year ago. So, you know, he told us he's had opportunity to come to MLS previously, wasn't ready earlier in his career to kind of leave Central Europe. And now he's ready. And he's a bigger guy, Spence. He's 6'2", 6'3", looks every bit as big as Olatunji, who I think is probably 6'4". A different type of striker than Olatunji. He's going to play between the lines a little more. He's going to be a little bit of a connector. He can play out wide, either left or right, if that's where he needs to be to combine with Luna or Gozo or Olatunji or Sanabria over on the left side. So Jason Kreis, actually, this is probably heaping the wrong type of expectations. But when Jason saw his tape, he's like, you know who he reminds me of is Thierry Henry. Now, clearly he doesn't have that pedigree or that goal scoring record, but maybe a year from now we're hopefully expanding those comparisons.
Let's move over now to Juan Manuel Sanabria. I think that's how you say it, 25 years old. We haven't spoke about this acquisition or addition, Trey. What should we know?
Yeah, Juan Manuel Sanabria has been the captain. He's been the captain down at Atletico San Luis in Mexico for the last 4 or 5 seasons. He did play at America First Field last summer in the Leagues Cup game. You may remember that was a tie, and that was the shootout loss for RSL in last year's Leagues Cup. He plays almost anywhere you need him on the left side. He can play left back in a back four. He can play left wing back, which is where he's going to play with us, and kind of combine with Catranas on those minutes up and down the left side. He's a good one-on-one defender. He's excellent in the attacking third with service and combination, and he can score a few goals here and there. He is a hopeful for the Uruguay World Cup team. He's played a ton of games for Uruguay's youth national teams over the years, and over the last 6 months, he's kind of broken into their full national team. So hopefully he and Diego Luna will be RSL's 2 representatives this summer in the World Cup for U.S. and Uruguay.
So we discussed it, I think, the day after it broke, but let's move over to Stein Spearings. And again, pronunciation, please let me know, because I'm going to have to be talking about these guys all year on radio and television. So I'll take this opportunity to tease coming up next week will be the season debut of Talkin' RSL. Some people are saying Talkin' RSL 2.0, but it'll be me and Brian Dunseth, KUTV, every Thursday, and Dunny's going to have some World Cup responsibilities with Turner. So we're going to maybe use a little bit of a rotating cast when Dunny is gone. But give us a little bit of an update on Stein, how he's fitting in, and what we should know.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be in Portugal when Stein signed and spent a few days with us, played a little bit against FC Dallas in the last preseason game over there. He's been in Europe for the last week trying to get his visa paperwork sorted. We believe, I think that appointment is either tomorrow or Monday, so hopefully he'll be back. Not sure he'll feature for the Vancouver game, but again, another big body, a guy that has, I think he's 29, so he's got extensive European experience, mostly in France, but also in Denmark. And he's going to be, Spence, I think, the first pure kind of number 6 destroyer defensive midfield type we've had, maybe even since like Kyle Beckerman, because we've had a lot of two-way guys there playing in a double pivot. But Stein is ideally going to line up, next to Emeka Anelli when he's healthy, or Pablo Ruiz or Noel Caliskin, but he's going to be the guy that kind of protects Justin Glad in that back three and lets the other kind of pivot fill that space and move forward and connect with the attack. But Stein is a guy that he'll win a lot of balls. He's very good in tight spaces, under pressure with the ball at his feet, so he will not give the ball away cheaply in bad positions, which is going to be critical under this new setup.
Lucas Engel, Middlesbrough FC in the Championship League over in the UK. You guys elected to move on from Brian Vera, just like you. We used to have a lot of Brians. Now we have no Brians. But is this is this just a thought where he's just going to slide in right next to Jay Glad at center back?
Yeah, Brian Dunseth is the lone remaining Brian.
That's right. Yeah,
you're right. Engel, we purchased from Middlesbrough last month. We had claimed his MLS rights in the second stage of the re-entry draft. He played 41 games last year, Spence, across different competitions for Cincinnati. So he and DeAndre Yedlin are extremely tight. They were kind of part of a little clique over there in Cincinnati, had a lot of success together there. Both of them very, very happy to be reunited here. And yeah, Engel is kind of projected as that starting left center back next to Glad. DeAndre over on the right side, Sanabria or Catranas wide left as wing back, and then some combination of Gozo or Dominic Marchuk as the right wing back in this in this kind of 3-5-2 setup. Although one other new signing, the Colombian U22 center back Juan Jose Arias, he's got a little bit of an adductor issue right now, but when he's ready to go, maybe you see him take that right center back place next to Yedlin. Maybe that pushes Yedlin to right wing back, which would push Gozo into the attack. But then, Pablo's got a lot of options for an Olatunji or a Gilavogi, a Gozo, Marchuk, different guys to maybe come off the bench and really change the game over the last 20 minutes of a match.
Okay, help me out here. I'm drinking out of a fire hose. So we've talked about Gilavogi, we've talked about Sanabria, we've talked about Stein, we've talked about Lucas Engel. That leaves two of the new players that you referenced earlier that I'm forgetting. Who are the other two signings?
Yeah, Juan Jose Arias,
okay.
Who I just talked briefly about, is a U22 from Atlético Nacional in Colombia. He just turned 22 years old. He's won 5 championships in his young career. Again, another 6'2" guy. His English is really, really good. Typically, some of the South American guys don't speak any. Juan Jose understands it perfectly. He speaks it better than he thinks. So I think as he's around a little bit and gains some confidence, he's going to be a truly bilingual addition back there, which will be great for you and your cohorts in the media, but also just great for the club. He's come in with a big smile. He's excited for the opportunity. And the last one is a guy named Sergei Solans, who was the 3rd leading scorer in the NCAA last year at UCLA. He's a guy that we actually drafted 2 years ago in the college draft after his first year at Oregon State. So he's a young Spaniard who looked great the first week in Utah, looked great the 2 weeks in Portugal, actually had a goal and an assist in those games that we were able to stream against Randers and Brøndby from Portugal. He's another guy that's been sitting in Europe trying to get his work visa the last couple 10 days or whatever. So hopefully he'll be back in Utah next week. Again, another guy that may not factor for the Vancouver trip just because of his immigration paperwork, but hopefully he's available and potential option for Pablo on February 28th when we host Seattle in the home opener.
All right, I'm going to take a shot at this. Okay, you tell me if I have this right. All right, new designated player, Morgan Gilavogi, who comes to us from France. We've got a 25 Uruguayan, Juan Manuel Sanabria. We've got a new center back in Lucas Engel, another center back in Juan Jose Arias, and then a young attacking player named Sergei Solans. Is that right?
Yep, that's perfect, Spence. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, all right. So those are the new players. Let's talk about the decision-making process, kind of like, and we're going to do this next week with Dunny on KUTV. So that's who's in. Okay, that's who's in. Those are the new players. Now, who's out that we got used to watching over the past year or two, and then tell us kind of some of the reasoning to move on from the pieces that are now out.
So the most prominent guys out are Rawan Cruz, who we added last August, played 7 games, had 0 goals, missed a PK, had 1 assist. He was a guy I really had high hopes for this summer or this year, Spence, but he came to us on a very well-structured loan from Kurt Schmid from Botafogo in Brazil. Botafogo wasn't paying its bills and had a transfer ban, so the easiest thing for us was to terminate that loan, let him go back to Botafogo. Botafogo sent him back to the club in Bulgaria where he had scored a ton of goals a year ago because they didn't pay for their $10 million purchase of Cruz. So he's gone. That opens up a DP spot. Diogo Gonçalves, who was here for a year and a half, he saw his contract bought out, a couple of weeks ago by RSL and MLS. He's now landed in Turkey, so that also opens up another DP spot. I think Kurt told you a couple of weeks ago that we're going to kind of keep the powder dry on the second DP spot for the summer. Arias fills the 4th U22 spot to go with Marchuk, Diego Luna, and Ari Piol, who we haven't talked much about. Ari spent the first part of January with the Australia U23s in an Asian Federation Cup tournament. He did pretty well. He's a guy, came in last year with a lot of raw talent, got more extensive professional minutes than he had ever seen in his career previously. So he's a guy that, that we think will continue to develop and have high hopes for in a number of different roles for both RSL and the Monarchs this year. You talked about Brian Vera gone. Brian Ojeda is also gone. Both of those players remain in the league, Vera in Montreal and Ojeda with Orlando. Tough to say goodbye to the Bryans, but it was good for them, and I think good for us as well as we continue to evolve, especially under this new system that Pablo and his new staff are implementing.
So Ruan Cruz, Diogo Gonçalves, Brian Vera, Brian Ojeda. Those are the notable players that are gone.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So let's move into this space. One of the main talking points, as Jason kind of announced on the KU TV side when I interviewed him, is there's a new formation. It is a 3-5-2. Okay, so give me, if you're comfortable doing this, when everybody is signed, when all the visas are done and all the processes are in place, and we're going to assume full health, a 3-5-2 back to front. What is a preferred 11 in your opinion?
Yeah, I think obviously we start with Rafa Cabral, who I don't know has gotten his due as probably the best goalkeeper in Major League Soccer, but he was our Iron Man last year, played every minute of all 40 games across multiple competitions in 2025. He's our leader. He's our spiritual leader. He's the first one in every day. He's the last one out every day. Just a phenomenal addition to the club. So Rafa Cabral in goal. Your 3 center back formation will have Justin Glad in the middle. I think DeAndre Yedlin for now on the right, Lucas Engel on the left. I do think Arias as the Colombian U22 might at some point force his way into that area, which, as I mentioned earlier, might then push Yedlin. And again, I think Yedlin's an everyday starter somewhere because he is, he's played in 2 World Cups. He's played 380-something professional games in Europe. Another, several hundred or a couple hundred in MLS. He's just a guy that exudes calm, class, poise, confidence. There's nothing he hasn't seen. And, when he came in for the final, 7-8 games last year, probably wasn't time for him to kind of throw his experience and leadership around, but he's really stepped up the first month of this preseason as a trusted leader in that locker room for both, the young guys and also the vets. So DeAndre is a phenomenal addition to us. I think in those 2 holding midfield spots, you're going to look at probably Spearings and Emeka Anelli as your starting duo. We talked about Spearings earlier. Emeka obviously had a great year 2 years ago. That put him on the U.S. national team radar. He spent last January in U.S. camp with Diego Luna. Unfortunately, the rest of 2025 was a bit of a injury-marred situation for Emeka. He had a stress fracture in his foot, had some soft tissue hamstring type injuries coming back from that. Has been dealing this preseason with a little bit of a kind of a knee issue, little irritation underneath his patella tendon. So he's on the mend, but as I think Pablo may have said to you a week or 2 ago, he's got to regain fitness, and that's the hardest part about missing time during preseason is really affects your fitness base. So clearly, that's a very deep area for us with Stein, with Emeka. You also have Noel Caliskin, who I think started 18 in the last 20 games last year at either holding mid or right back. He was referred in an interview by DeAndre with Dunny yesterday as kind of the brains of the operation, just one of the smartest tactical guys on the team. So Noel's going to see a lot of minutes. And then, of course, we still have Pablo Ruiz, who as kind of a deep line playmaker from those holding mid positions, that left foot can put a ball on anybody's chest.
Who's going to start, pal? We don't have a ton of time here. So let's just stick with the 11.
And then up top, you got Sanabria on the left, Petronas will start if Sanabria is gone or can't go. You've got Gozo on the right, and then I think Olatunji and Gilavogi are going to be your two strikers up top.
And obviously that's Diego in the middle, right? I mean, that's right. Diego's in the middle, yeah.
How could I overlook Diego? Diego's got the keys to the castle as the number 10 driving the ship.
So up top, you said Olatunji and then the new DP, right?
Yep, Olatunji and Gilavogi.
Okay, so the position of most depth clearly is central holding mid, right? That's where the most depth on the squad remains, and that was kind of the case a year ago, right?
Yeah, I mean, with Ojeda, Emeka, Kaliskin, and there is just a lot of depth there. So, we do have asked a lot of guys to play multiple positions. Like Gozo played 4 different attacking positions last year. He kind of came in as a right winger, but ended up playing the 10, playing up top. For the U20s, he even plays on the left wing. So between Gozo, Yedlin, Gilavogi, you've got plenty of guys that can play a lot of different spots. And I think the idea is just, as you say every day, is to score more goals and create more opportunities. And I think Pablo, Kurt, Jason, Tony feel like they really have the options to have a deep attacking options both to start and to finish games.
There are certain names that even fans, even people that aren't fans of the sport just know. And if you're not a golf fan, you know who Tiger Woods is. If you're not a basketball fan, you know who LeBron is. Caitlin Clark, women's basketball. We could go down the list. When it comes to baseball fans, I don't love baseball. If you're that guy, you know who Shohei Ohtani is. And it doesn't matter your opinion about soccer. Lionel Messi is thought to be not just the greatest that has ever done it in this generation, but potentially the greatest to ever do it. And I'll leave that debate to people that know more than I do. But I bring it up because it will be a historic day. And there are going to be a lot of people that are going to be pinching themselves to say, wait, Lionel Messi is playing soccer in Sandy, Utah. Let's hone in on that match, kind of the update and the buzz around this historic arrival in April.
Yeah, I mean, April 22nd, I think for a long, last 90 days has felt like a long time away. But between the boost that we received with additional season tickets, additional 4-game packages, additional tickets available to season ticket holders for this game, I believe tonight the single game, actually it started last night, it went out to the priority list, single game tickets for Messi. People are stepping up to the plate, Spence, excited to see what could be another historic sporting event in the state of Utah. Steve Starks compared it a month ago to kind of Michael Jordan being here for the finals. You're a guy that's been around, and whether it's Magic Bird in '79, whether it's Jordan in the finals, whether it's the Winter Olympics, we had Real Madrid here in 2006. There's been some iconic moments, and this Messi Miami visit in April will be right there. America First Field will be overflowing at the brim, and it'll hopefully be an amazing night for soccer, just kind of on the eve of a World Cup summer.
I think I would add when Seth Tremblay took the stage at Soccer Rocks Utah in 2004 to that list.
At the Sandy Amphitheater,
Yep.
That was historic.
Yeah, it was historic. All right, before I set you loose, last time a World Cup was played in this region, and specifically in '94, it was here in the United States. It bred Major League Soccer. I mean, in a lot of ways, it was a direct tie to the creation of this league that now, decades later, is not just in a good place, but growing by most metrics. And you're a guy, just for our listeners' context, Trey came to us from the league. He was like Don Garber's right-hand man. So you, of course, have the RSL Prism, but you also are probably one of 5 people in our market that can talk about the league-wide stuff. So last thing that I'll set you loose, the hope for the game domestically as a result of the biggest sporting event in the world, and it's actually not close. What does that sound like, Trey?
Yeah, I think having the opportunity to host a World Cup, especially an expanded now 48-team World Cup in North America, most of the games in the U.S., some in Mexico and Canada, it's just everybody believes it will be rocket fuel, as I've heard John Kimball say repeatedly, for every one of the 30 MLS teams. And, the eyes of the world will be on a version of American soccer. In 1994, MLS grew out of that World Cup, and there were, dozens of world stars that, from spending a month in the United States, said, you know what, I want to play here. MLS was supposed to start in 1995. It ended up not starting until 1996 with 10 teams, but the marquee players for each team came from that World Cup. And whether they were American or South American or Mexican or European world iconic stars, they are the ones that grew this league. And now here we are 30 years later. You've got 30 teams in this league, most of them with their own stadiums, now their own training facilities, billion-dollar stadiums, billion-dollar expansion fees. It's hard to wrap your brain around. There are no limits to where this summer's World Cup is going to take MLS and the sport of soccer in America at all levels for the next, generation or two.
All right, buddy. Well, thanks for stepping in and pinch hitting. I'll let you go so you can spin some Kid Rock records, and we'll get you back soon, okay?
All right, Spence. Have a good one. Thank you.
Trey Fitzgerald, 6 new players in, 4 players out. Opening match right around the corner. Home opener the week after against Seattle. RSL.com is where you go for more information. All right, before we catch a break, new client on the show. Pumped about this because I work with them, and it's always fun where you can give like a personal experience when a client has signed on board. It's Game Day Men's Health, and if you haven't taken advantage of the offer they're giving you as a listener of the show, I would really encourage you to go do it. If you want to get in shape, if you want to lose weight, if you need to lose a lot of weight because you feel like your health is in danger, they have the weight loss stuff, semaglutide, tirzepatide. If you haven't tried it, appears to be very effective. And with this deal, you can't get it anywhere cheaper than with Game Day Men's Health. But for me, a couple of years ago, I set a goal to get into the best shape that I've ever been in as an adult. Finally wanted to do it, right? We always talk about it like, okay, I'm just going to go do it. Clean up some habits, started eating clean, exercising daily. After a couple months, was really disappointed and discouraged with lack of results. So I was talking to a friend about it, and he recommended Game Day Men's Health and said, if you've never tried supplementing testosterone, it's kind of like a cheat code. The kids call it biohacking these days. So they're giving you the very same deal that they gave me, and they're going to put the process in place for you that they put in place for me that allowed me to get into the best shape I've ever been in as an adult a couple of years ago. And the good news is 2 years later, using their help and obviously putting in the work, I've maintained the shape, and you guys can do it too. So the deal is a free consultation, absolutely free. And by the way, no obligation. You just go in for the free consultation. They're going to take a little bit of blood work, okay, just a little bit of blood work. Then they're going to go over your levels with you and say, okay, you're good here. We can help you out over here. And they're going to go over the options. For me, it was supplementing testosterone, then utilizing some of their peptides. Right? So that's the first step. But here's the kicker. It's February, which is the second month of the year. That's my understanding of how calendars work. And they're offering you 50% off all year long. It's the deal I use that makes these products very affordable. And once upon a time, they were kind of reserved for like celebrities or high-end athletes. So go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com right now. Schedule your free consultation. Lehigh, Pleasant Grove, Cottonwood Heights, South Ogden. Find the one that's closest to you. Tell them you heard me talking about it on the show, and boom, free consultation, 50% off all year long. It's our good friends at Game Day Men's Health. All right, we'll catch a break. A little sports court, as we do every Thursday, comes your way. Then we'll launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the program. Busy Thursday show, and it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. It is Sports Court time on a Thursday afternoon, as it is every week about this time. Our good friends Garrett and Preston Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy, our guests. Gentlemen, happy Thursday. How we doing?
Hey, Spence. Good. How you doing?
All good here. All good here. Appreciate the time. So let's dig in here, and we're going to spend a few minutes on this story that unfortunately is something that we'll start with here on the program as Parker Kingston, a wide receiver from BYU, a very, very good player, is going to face a first-degree felony rape charge. According to a statement posted online by the Washington County Attorney's Office, he's being held without bail, and it looks like his first appearance will be Friday. So you guys are the attorneys. This is obviously a really ugly story in a lot of different ways. So which direction would you like to take it?
Yeah, we'll just dig in, Spence, and kind of spend some time talking about the stuff. But, yeah, hit yesterday, bombshell, and the first thing that everyone thinks is, what do they think about Jake Ratzloff? That's what it goes to. But this is the same but very different in many ways. So what we know is what's been reported. And as you mentioned, it was reported in the articles yesterday that the Parker Kingston, a star wide receiver for BYU, he had been arrested and charged with rape and was being held without bail in St. George jail. So that's what was reported. It was also indicated that the detective stated that they had been gathering evidence and had spoken to many witnesses before these charges were filed. Garrett, in his resourcefulness, he obtained the court filings, which give us a lot more detail and I think are very interesting. What we have is we have an affidavit of probable cause, and we have the information. He was arrested based on allegations that happened apparently a year ago in February of 2025, and charges just filed just yesterday. So what we learned in the there's an information. And information is something that's filed by the county attorney or the district attorney that sets forth the claim, and that I'll read it to you. It just says. Count 1, rape, a first-degree felony. Defendant had sexual intercourse with another without consent. That's the charge. It's a first-degree felony. Then there's what's called a probable cause affidavit, which sets forth certain facts. And I won't go through all of them, but I think the important ones for the listeners to hear out there who haven't had a chance to see these documents is, one, they stated that on February 27, 2025, and this was 4 days after what was the alleged incident complained of. It said that this victim made contact with officers of St. George at the regional hospital there to report a sexual assault. Then I think a couple of important things was it also said that she claimed that without her consent, he raped her. Won't go into a lot of the details. But another thing it sets forth, and I think this is fair, it says, in an interview with the defendant, that's Parker Kingston, he claims that the activity with the victim was consensual, and based on the communications that they received on him, it can be inferred that he went to her apartment with the intention of having consensual sexual intercourse. Now, we don't know when they interviewed him. I think that's important. Was this contemporaneous with her claims? Was that just recently? Who knows? I think that would be important. Also, this doesn't state anything about DNA, which I think would be important to list. It also doesn't list any findings of a rape kit, which would indicate trauma. So we don't know everything. So, Spence, I think there's a lot of questions, and I'll jump on one of them, and I'll let Garrett kind of handle another one. But I think the first question that a lot of people ask themselves is, why did this take a year? I mean, it was alleged this happened a year ago, and why did it take a year? Well, I think the reason is prosecutors want to make sure they have their ducks in a row. They don't want to, unless it's an overzealous prosecutor, they don't want to file charges that they don't think that they can meet the burden. They don't think they have the facts or the testimony or the things to support the burden of their case. So that's what I think happened here. That's why we're seeing it a year later. That's speculation. And again, this is a criminal case. This is not a civil case. And I'll let Garrett jump in and kind of answer the questions on, in addition to a few things, how this is different than the Ratzloff case, what happens now, and any questions you have, Spence.
Garrett,
just follow up
go ahead, Garrett.
on that on that, Preston, I mean, yeah, and I think people have been wanting to make this comparison with the Jake Retzloff case. I mean, again, the underlying allegation's the same, right? This is sexual assault, a rape. But these are happening in really two totally different venues, right? One is a criminal case, which is this one involving Parker Kingston, and Retzloff case was a civil case, which is a case brought by a plaintiff, brought by, in that case, the woman who brings the case and is seeking compensation. That's not what's happening here. And again, I think people jump to some conclusions and do misunderstand that. So that's a big distinction here to understand. This is a criminal case. Brought by the prosecutor. There is an appearance. He's supposed to appear tomorrow at 1:30. We're going to know more. I think undoubtedly he'll plead not guilty. I haven't seen an appearance yet for an attorney representing him, but for sure he's got one, or better line one up quick.
Okay, a couple follow-ups. Let's stay in the space for a moment because, of course, this has been a massive story across the landscape of our ecosystem here, and obviously it's not a sports story. I don't want to make it a sports story, and things like this reveal the side of the rivalry I just don't like. If you're taking a victory lap because you cheer for a different football team based off of something as serious as this, then maybe rethink your approach. But you tell me so no bail set. Without a law degree, that strikes me as something like, I don't know. I just want to know what that means. They did not set bail for Parker Kingston.
I don't know the answer, Spence, but here's what I'm going to suspect, that the level of the crime, a first-degree felony, when the charges and the arrest happens, I think incarceration happens, and, that's why they're doing a speedy arraignment. Tomorrow will be the arraignment where he steps in and, offers his plea, which will no doubt be not guilty. And I think it's important to caution the people out there that, there are conflicting stories in a case like this. There's a victim who feels her cause is just. There's a prosecutor who feels like he can meet his burden, and there's a defendant out there with constitutional rights. So I have no doubt that tomorrow the issue of bail will be addressed, and the judge will, I think, set bail. He won't be held over.
Garrett, can I ask you if you have anything to add to that dynamic, that there's no bail set in this case?
Yeah, no, I agree with Preston. I think we'll find out tomorrow. And probably there will be bail. Okay.
Again, I'm coming at this with no legal knowledge, so you're just going to have to kind of guide us. When it comes to different jurisdictions, what this means, where it happened down in southern Utah, as opposed to anywhere else, is there anything there, any meat on that bone, any information you can share?
Well, there is. I mean, this is happening in the 5th District, which is in St. George. That's apparently where the alleged crime took place. I mean, although Parker Kingston apparently, I think is from Davis County, but, may live in Provo, right? That's where it took place, so that's where the charges are.
All right. So obviously these days we're all being monitored all the time with texts we sent with our phone or emails we send on our computer. And from what I'm reading, the law enforcement people involved, investigators, have some text messages back and forth and online interaction. I don't know if it's a dating app or a social media direct message situation, but what sort of dynamic does that bring into play here?
Well, it'll be evidence. Yeah, for sure, it'll be evidence, and I think it will be used to, there are, if people want to read it, it talks about, that there was some communication online or on a dating app and stuff where it talked about them setting a time to meet up and and spend time together, and in her opinion, and I think this is probably supported by text, there were, I'll use this as without parameter set, boundary set, in her opinion, that there was clear boundaries set in their communications, and those will absolutely be evidence. Anytime you're texting with someone, you both have that same evidence, right? You both got the text, assuming you held on to them. And so, I think it's important that she did report this a few days later. I mean, the Retzloff case was reported months later, and so there are those issues here, and people can see how they want, but victims face a lot of different things, and so it's the legal process. Let's let it play its way out. Like I said, there's a victim, and then there's a defendant who has rights.
So a couple more things, then we'll move on. when you kind of dig into the details, as you referenced, Preston, she did initially report this in February of last year. This was 1 year ago. And am I to understand that they then followed up on the charges and spoke with Parker Kingston in February and then just elected at the time that there was not enough evidence or information to arrest him? Is that kind of how this went down?
We don't know. I wish in this probable cause statement, I wish that it just says, in an interview with defendant, he claims that it was consensual. I wish it said, started with a date, on such and such a date in an interview with defendant, meaning that within weeks did they talk to him, and this has been kind of an ongoing investigation over the last year, or was it just something they talked about it to him about a few weeks ago? We don't know that. I think that's important to know. If I'm doing an investigation, I want to talk to all the witnesses, contemporaneous with when something happened, when their memory is the freshest, and you'll get a sense of things early on. So we don't know the answer to that, but they did talk to him.
So Porter just sent me an article from the Deseret News that says documents had been sealed because Kingston was believed to be a flight risk, according to court documents. What does that say to you?
Garrett?
Well, that could answer our question about bail, right? Interesting. And I did see that in the docket that some documents had been sealed and then unsealed yesterday when we learned about this. Well, there's more to the story, right? This is going to be a process. I mean, like Preston said, people shouldn't rush to judgment. There's a lot to come out, I think, that as this will unfold.
I'm reading through this. In an interview with the defendant, he claims all sexual activity with they're calling her AM was consensual based on communications obtained from Kingston's cell phone. After the incident, it can be inferred that he went to her apartment with the intention of having sexual intercourse. Maybe the answer is obvious. It just he went there with the intent of sleeping with her, and she claims she set boundaries that was not going to happen. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Leading up to that, that's paragraph 7 of the probable cause affidavit. Leading up to that, it sets forth all of her things that, important to her as the communication and their interaction at her place, watching TV and, and getting involved and then not involved in a few things. And then, like I read, it says that she said, I won't go into the details, but without her consent, raped her. And that's part of the affidavit, too.
Brigham Young released a statement, quote, BYU became aware today of the arrest of Parker Kingston. The university takes any allegation very seriously and will cooperate with law enforcement. Due to federal and university privacy laws and practices for students, the university will not be able to provide any additional comment. I got two more things, then we'll move on. Are we left to surmise that even though this happened a year ago, as a result of law enforcement's decisions to not charge Parker then, that there is actually a way that this just kind of slipped between the cracks and BYU was not aware of this, even though this happened February of 2025?
I believe that. I don't think necessarily BYU knew about this. I know people are saying that. How could they not have known, and that they've covered for him or something? But, this didn't happen on campus, and I'm going to guess she's not a BYU student. And so this may not have gone through any of those channels that sometimes happen involving a student athlete on a campus. And so this is outside of that and really not relevant to his, status as a BYU football player. So, that may not have happened.
Spence, let me add something.
Go ahead.
It will definitely affect his status as a BYU football player and a student. And if we remember right, Jake Retzloff, it was a civil case, and the prosecutors looked at this, and they didn't think they had evidence to pursue it criminally. So very different, and maybe there'll be a civil case down the road with Parker, but we don't want to speculate on that.
Last thing on this, just help us understand how this plays out. What's next? Are we going to see, the appearance where the charges are brought, and then, as you referenced, pleads not guilty, and then I'm just going to ask you, how does this play out? What's the process now?
Well, he's going to appear tomorrow, like we talked about. But I think what'll be interesting is what kind of strategy is he going to take from a defense standpoint, right? Is he going to want to make a statement in the media, essentially, just to try to counter the story, right? Because I'm sure from his side he's going, hey, this has been very one-sided, right? I haven't had a chance to say my side of this. This is all coming from the victim and the prosecution. And so we could see that his attorney perhaps make a statement to try to, change course on this.
And just real quick, did you say that we have not heard who his counsel is? We do not know who his attorney is yet?
We don't.
Okay.
We don't. And no one's entered an appearance yet.
And I'm surprised he didn't have an attorney already for that interview, whenever that was, that interview. And how this is going to play out, he might want to push for a speedy trial. And the question is, many defendants, criminally charged defendants, they enter into a plea deal. And I doubt we're going to see a plea deal here. He's going to take the strong defense as this was consensual, and her position is going to be this was not consensual. And when you run into a he said, she said things, there better be evidence out there that, supports one of your positions. I mean, that's what's going to get – they're going to go through a process called discovery and, push this, interviewing witnesses more. And, the criminal calendar is different than the civil calendar. It moves faster typically.
I'm sorry to stay in the space, but I'm genuinely curious. So he said, she said dynamic, but what does it say, if anything, maybe there's nothing there, that she did report pretty quickly after the incident went down?
I think it bolsters her claim, right? I think so. I mean, it's 4 days. 4 days later is when it's reported. But like Preston said, I mean, I think they must have something in these text messages or other communications. I don't know if it's a voicemail or whatever. They must have something, right, for these prosecutors to believe that they can meet their burden of proof, which is high in a criminal case, right? It's beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's a tall burden.
All right, let's move over here, and we might have to kill the final couple stories just based off of time. I just think a lot of people are interested in this, and honestly, having you guys be able to walk us through it instead of me just blabbing about possibilities is a better thing. But there was another lawsuit filed in the world of college football locally. A former University of Utah football player is suing coaches and administration for allegedly discriminating against him because he has type 1 diabetes. I cover the Utes. I go to all the games. I don't know who Devin Green is. He transferred from UNLV to Utah. So unpack this one for us. What's going on here?
Yeah, that's right. Devin Green's a UNLV transfer, running back, and came to the U last year, so in 2025. And essentially the argument is that he has a disability, which is type 1 diabetes. And he's saying, hey, the U knew when they recruited me that I had this condition, and I was cleared medically and everything. I was ready, cleared to play, and they didn't play me because of my disability. They held me out, not just from games, but he's saying I was held out from practice. He says he was consistently denied competitive repetitions and evaluation opportunities that were afforded to non-disabled teammates. So again, the basis of this is an ADA case. It's an Americans with Disabilities Act case, and he's got a qualifying disability, and he's saying, I was treated differently only because of my disability. I met all the other criteria, right? I'm academically eligible. I don't have any discipline issues. I'm in good standing. They're aware of this, but they specifically held me out for those reasons, and now I've been harmed. And the way he's been harmed is he says, I've lost my scholarship. I've entered the transfer portal, and nobody's picking me up. And they didn't give me a fair shake there because of my disability. And so an interesting case, because certainly the defense is going to be, well, he was too far down on the depth chart, right? We've got a running back room full of very talented running backs, and he just didn't make the grade. And so, again, I mean, they've got to have something here really specific regarding that he's held out on the basis of his disability.
Over to you, Preston.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just pulling from the lawsuit. There's some interesting things that they allege. I mean, a lot of it's aimed at this running back coach, Atuaia. It said he exercised unilateral discretion to override medical clearance decisions, meaning the running back was cleared, he could play, and he said based on his fear and misconceptions, it also said he was regularly denied full speed repetitions, evaluated opportunities, and meaningful integration and game planning, and that Atuaia was scared to put him in due to his diabetes diagnosis, and that Atuai further acknowledged that his decision not to play him or put him in practice or game situations was not based on Green's talent, performance, or effort. Again, these are allegations set forth in a lawsuit, and they'll be responded to by the defense, the University of Utah, and all the parties there. And it'll go down that road. Garrett found an interesting fact. Garrett's full of interesting facts. The lawyer representing him has his own disabilities and specializes in this area of law and is very well versed in it. So it'll be interesting.
I was going to break, but we have to end on this one because Diego Pavia is the gift that keeps on giving Sports Court. So a federal judge, I hadn't heard about this. Once upon a time, staying in school for longer than 4 years, people cracked on you that you were an idiot. Well, a federal judge will soon issue a ruling that the NCAA contends could lead to a college athlete playing, wait for it, 18 seasons at the beginning of their play at Division I schools at the age of 32. Go ahead. I can't even wrap my mind around this.
Well, yeah, when I saw that, it just caught my eye, and I thought, oh, do we have to do another eligibility? So this grows out of, we talked about our guy Diego Pavia, where he originally in 2024 filed a request for preliminary injunction to allow him to play based on the fact that he was a JUCO player and he didn't feel like he'd used up his eligibility. Well, that preliminary injunction was granted. He played the 24 season. Then it kept in place, and he played the 25 season. And lo and behold, this lawsuit is still going. The preliminary injunction is not the actual lawsuit. It's just kind of a thing that the judge allows, kind of saying, if we don't grant this, there'll be irreparable harm. And the irreparable harm was Diego wouldn't be able to play, and he wouldn't be able to go back and play. So the lawsuit is ongoing, and I won't dig into all the details, but yeah, the NCAA, they came out with an argument, and their arguments essentially are that, hey, this is different than the minor leagues. This is college, and what they're trying to get is, hey, you can go play JUCO ball, you can sit out a year, you can have a prep year, and you can still have your 4 years of Division I football. And the NCAA said, they haven't really shown that this violates antitrust law. And the headline comes from the NCAA's statement that says, if played out the way that they wanted to, it would permit student athletes to compete 18 seasons of intercollegiate competition, 2 seasons of JUCO competition, 4 seasons of Division III competition, 4 seasons of Division II, 4 seasons of NAIA. Is that still around? I didn't even know that was around. And then you could matriculate with 4 seasons at D1. So the NCAA is kind of playing this out to its craziest, most ridiculous extent, kind of saying, well, if you grant this is basically what you're saying. And the plaintiffs possibly has said, I'm going to enter the draft. I'm not going to stay in here and try and get another year. He said this is just fear-mongering by the NCAA because that will never, ever happen. But, we'll see.
Garrett, final word is yours, buddy.
I think Preston has a really great outside. He's got a great jump shot still. Played a little bit of JUCO ball, and so I think if we get him in a graduate program, the Utes need all the help they can get right now, and why not, right?
Preston could play 15 minutes for the Utes right now. Let's be very clear.
All right. There you go.
All right, gentlemen. Before I set you loose, I was busy Sunday. Did you guys catch the Super Bowl? I didn't see it.
I caught it, and admittedly, I went in thinking that the Pats were playing with house money, and this is just going to make it so much sweeter when the second dynasty happens.
You've gone to 12 Super Bowls and won 6, Preston. I think you're doing okay. All right. Before I set you loose, for any of our listeners who have legal questions, how do they get a hold of you? Over at Handy and Handy.
Yeah, Spence, we love coming on here, and today was especially enjoyable because I think a lot of back and forth, listeners enjoy that. But we're a personal injury law firm. We help people that have been involved in accidents, represent them through the process, make sure they get taken care of and compensated. Give us a call at 801-264-6677 or visit our website at handylawutah.com.
Okay, gentlemen, thanks for the time. Good stuff today. Enjoy the weekend. And, of course, as always, go Utes.
Thanks, Ben. Go Utes.
All right, Garrett and Preston Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy. We'll post that online if you missed it. A good breakdown of the Parker Kingston situation, a topic that's just hard to cover. So they're ultimately covering it from the legal angle, which is the best way to do it. All right, we're late. We'll catch a break. Final hour of the show is next on ESPN 700. All right, final segment of the program, Thursday afternoon style. It's a weird night in college basketball. There are like a million games and really none featuring even top 25 teams. So Utah and BYU were off until Saturday. The Utah Jazz play tonight, kind of. The injury report, of course, the big news of the day today is Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to undergo a little knee surgery to remove a growth, a non-cancerous growth. Of course, that's always good news. And he is not expected to play all year. Keontae George, got to feel bad for that kid. That ankle injury must be horrible. And Lauri Markkanen is out tonight for rest. Porter, I honestly...
Me too, by the way.
Same. I'm not... Like, Smitty's like, you going to the game? I'm like, what? Why? Maybe I'll start going next year. I am so confused. What's the process that's in place for the NBA to find these teams? Like, the Kings showed up last night and sat 6 of their best 7 players. The Jazz aren't even faking it. They're like, Lowry's out for rest. When do you get fined?
Well, that's what I like about the Jazz. Like the same reason that people are this week kind of upset with what the Jazz are doing is the reason that I'm kind of okay with it, because here's the quiet part that we're not supposed to say out loud. Sorry to our one partner of gambling stuff. They would rather the league would rather you make up an injury and put it on the injury report before the game than just be honest and rest your players the last 10 minutes of the game. They would rather you do that because guess what? ESPN Bet, DraftKings, Prize Picks, it brought to you by whatever the next one is, right? And I think that is a huge part of this that is, integrity of the game. Forget all that. This is what we are talking about. This is why people are up in arms about it. This is why fans are really mad that Lauri Markkanen isn't playing the last 15 minutes of the game. These are guys that are not in the market, not fans of either team, because guess what? They picked a parlay that includes Lauri Markkanen over 22.5 points. Jazz Magic over the over-under. It's, to me, that is an affront to the integrity of basketball, especially in a calendar year in which we've had multiple arrests, multiple players and coaches, active NBA head coaches embroiled in gambling schemes. It's the same reason that I liked when Kyle Whittingham essentially threw a middle finger to the injury report stuff, because he knows that the only people like really, really, really benefiting from that, outside of sometimes your opponent, are the people in Las Vegas and the people who are making deals at the league office and with these big media companies and gambling companies. I know we're not supposed to say it out loud, but for me, that's where I'm kind of zeroing in on this whole thing.
Yeah, you've been on this for a while, and I think you're good to bring it to the table. And also, I'm mad at you because you didn't find out that Kyle was leaving for Michigan in time for me to put $1 million on Kalshi.
There were a lot of breadcrumbs if you listened to this show back in early December.
But if you would have told your good friend and coworker, I could have made some money on Kalshi.
I remember the day that Kyle stepped down. And you asked me the question, the last segment of the show. Do you think he coaches again? And this was when it was like just weird language in the release, right? I said absolutely. I think you gave me a percentage, and I said 80.
Was this before Sharon Moore went P. Diddy on us?
It was the same day.
It was the same day.
And now we can go back on it. Kyle and Michigan were conversing that day. It didn't take long. So, for the same reason that I like what Kyle was doing with the injury report stuff during the season, even though it just absolutely infuriated a lot of people.
Yeah.
I kind of like that the Jazz, at some points during this year, haven't tried to hide it, haven't tried to get cute with it. They're saying, hey, we're resting our guys in the fourth quarter, instead of, in parentheses, back soreness, knee soreness. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot deeper than just a little bit of load management.
You know what? Like, I've been I can remember when the rumor started about, okay, there's a push to legalize sports gambling, and not just daily fantasy, just like blatant sports books, the ability to, and the prediction markets this is gambling on steroids. Like I said, I have it on my phone because I think it's fascinating. I don't know how they do it. So I've just conceded the fact, like, okay, it's part of the deal now. All these leagues are in bed with these gambling apps, but I hate the fact that I'm watching a basketball game and a football game and it's pissed all over the screen.
Yeah,
it's just like updates, live odds. Here's where you go. And watching the Olympics, I know you can bet on the Olympics because with the prediction markets, you can gamble on anything. It's just so refreshing that it's not all over the TV screen. It's like the one thing, and again, you can gamble on it. You can gamble on it. You can gamble on whether or not it's going to rain tomorrow in Salt Lake, okay? I know you can gamble on it, but I just love that I'm watching the Olympic Games without having that stuff just shoved down my throat.
And I want to be clear, I lost on length of national anthem at the Super Bowl, so I'm a degenerate as well.
What are you doing, young man?
I am very much like not excused from this situation. I just don't have an issue kind of calling it on its face what it is, because it's a bigger part of this whole conversation than anyone in national media and anyone at the league offices are willing to admit.
Can I ask you how much money you lost on the length of the national anthem, idiot?
I only put $5.
All right. Okay. That's not that bad. All right. Before we catch a break, final PGA Tour leaderboard update, courtesy of our friends at Uinta Golf. I want to let you know that you can join Uinta Golf for the President's Day weekend sale by Worldwide Golf. Save 25% on all clearance apparel, 20% on clearance bags and shoes, and you get Prior Gen Callaway TaylorMade and Bridgestone balls for just $44.99 a dozen. I need to swing by. Swing into Uinta Golf, trusted by golfers since 1971 and home of the 90-day satisfaction guarantee. Uinta Golf, get there. Rio, I believe it's Hisatune, carded a 62. He's your leader in the clubhouse at 10 under par. The following golfers are at 9 under par, Sam Burns and Keegan Bradley. Keegan finished strong. All right, give it up for our guy, Tony Finau. 8 under par for Tony. He's tied for third with Patrick Rogers and Chris Gotterup, who's on fire these days. Following golfers, 7 under par, Nick Taylor, Akshay Bhatia, Andrew Novak, and Tom Hoagie. Russell Henley, Jordan Spieth, Jake Knapp, Sepp Straka, Mackenzie Hughes, and Ricky Fowler. At 6 under par, as is Matt Fitzpatrick and Patrick Cantlay. What a good leaderboard. Where is Scotty Scheffler, who was like a 3-1 favorite, which you never see unless Tiger's doing Tiger things? Oh, Scotty even today. Woof, tied for 62. Somebody else might win the tournament. All right, Porter, before we get out of here, how are we going to get our listeners' weekend started out the right way on a Friday show?
Friday edition of The Drive, NBA Daily Assist, doubled up with Dave McMenamin and Howard Beck at All-Star Weekend. Paul Pugmire for the latest in golf world. Andy Phillips talking, we could talk some off-season football, maybe some skiing, some luging, I don't know, anywhere with Andy Phillips. And then Andrew Bernstein will stop by the program as well, one of the greatest photogs in the business, and doing his own thing on Legends of Sport, too.
There's a chance that if there's a sports picture taken in the past 40 years that you love, that Andrew Bernstein may have taken it. We will say goodnight and a special thank you today to Richard Smith, Tim McMahon, and, well, Trey Fitzgerald. For any of the sound you may have missed, even Trey, check out the podcast page. Website is ESPN700sports.com. We got an app. It's free. Check that out. Then the podcast is The Drive with Spence Checketts, available wherever you get your shows. He's Porter. I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Thursday evening. We'll talk to you on a jam-packed Friday Drive. As always, you can catch that right here on ESPN 700.